Is this not why you are here?
Nothing like the classics. Classic Rollo.
Hey, y'all.
Oh, boy. I used to try to come up with something clever and pithy for these little intro talks. We're just going to get down to business today. Everybody's rolling their eyes right now. Rollo never gets down to business. What the hell is, you can just fool him. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to get into emotion and reason. We're going to get into what the hell is all with these pills. Oh my goodness. Pills, who's got the pills?
Could you please clear up the cock article you wrote?
I am not going to talk about
Again?
this. And basically, you know what? Fuck you for
Me?
bringing this up right here and right now.
Me?
Why are you doing this to me?
I didn't know that. I didn't know what it was.
Well, just use a little bit of fucking common sense.
Sorry, apologies.
Yeah. Fuck you.
Elizabeth.
Heartfelt.
Elizabeth Harrison says, gonna miss the show, but have a good break. IHTAC. What you got?
Oh,
Could you please
poor poor Sydney. My bad. Sorry. Thank you guys. Thanks for being patient with me today. Today's going to be a very video heavy day today, so it's difficult for me to load all these videos up and then stream them from here. It's one thing to have like one or two videos on load, and it's another thing to have I don't know, 4 or 5 of them, and it slows everything down and it gums up the business. Yeah, I know. Thank you for the echo. Yeah, I know there was echo in the beginning of that. My bad. Anybody see that? Yeah, I picked up the echo. Thank you. I got it. Thank you. No more. Sam Bada's in the chat. Torsha will probably join us at some point. I think Mishishi is going to be in the chat as well today too. Oh man, we're getting close to the end of the year, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants today. I apologize for getting off 1 minute late. I'm not on fresh and fit time. I don't just throw out a video and say, yeah, I'll be on at 7, and that pretty much means like 8:30. So you know what? I love nothing but love, guys. Yes, that was a day ago? Yeah, 2 days ago. I think it was Thursday's show. Maybe I had more than that. Maybe it's Friday's show. For You Are Here, as you guys know, I've already been on there. I have come to know Elijah Schaefer. Actually, I kind of knew him before. He followed me on Twitter, and I followed him back a while ago. And then he said he had a new show coming up, and they were building it, and that's You Are Here. It's on the Blaze Network, as you can see. If you follow my clips channel, you'll also see the clips that I did. I did 2 shows on You Are Here, and then I did 1 show on Slightly Offensive with Elijah, and I thought both of those were really, really good. In fact, I'm hoping Tom is going to get to doing some clips of the Slightly Offensive show. Tom, if you're listening, because I thought that one was really good. However, I like Sydney well enough. She, at least she did her homework on me when I was there, and so somebody passed this to me when Jack Murphy was on the show just Friday. Now, I did not know that Jack was going to be showing up on this. However, he's been making the rounds. If you follow Jack Murphy, you'll know that I already have a history with Jack Murphy, and I don't mean in the biblical sense. I mean, he was part of a group of guys who in 2019 decided to all stab me in the back. So I'm more than happy to watch him flounder on a show like this. However, I didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't me. Wasn't me. I didn't even know he was on there until somebody had posted in my Twitter feed that he had been on, and there'd been some sort of dust up, and I'm like, what the hell? So they gave me this clip, and has been making the rounds as well. And in fact, a lot of the guys from Tim Pool right now, Tim Pool himself has sort of had a dust up with, I think it's R.A. the Savage Man or whatever. This is the rapper guy. The masculine man, the real man. I forget what his moniker is. And this came hot on the heels of Tim's sort of like almost posting up fight with RA rapper guy. And I thought this was kind of interesting because I watched, I of course, now I'm fascinated, right? I mean, I have to like sort of, I don't know, I have to curb my interest a little bit here because it's like, I don't know anything about like Jack since like right around 2019. I know he's been on Tim Pool for a while. People told me he was on earlier this year while I was in Miami, as a matter of fact. And I thought that was kind of interesting. He's a semi-regular guy. Recently, he's been sort of run up the flagpole for his, what was it? The Rugged Man. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. Where'd it go? There it is. The Rugged Man. All right. You got it. You got to hey y'all. Hey y'all. That, yeah, the Rugged Man. I can't keep up with this stuff, man. Island Boys were enough. It like clouds my brain. Yeah, so anyways, I watched this and I'm like, wow, that is a real kind of emotional spike there. That's kind of, as I've said before, when we talk about instinct, emotion, and reason, for the most part, men default to, or men should anyways, our natural proclivities is defaulting from instinct, rationality, or reason, and then emotion. However, in this day and age, really since, the 70s, let's just say, since the rise of feminine primacy, thanks for that, Brad. I much appreciate it. Thank you for all the Christmas holiday magic. I wish I had that sound drop just for this month. So I'm watching this and I'm thinking this is he got provoked to emotion. Now, for those of you who don't know what's going on, I'm not here to pillory Jack Murphy as much as I would love to. However, what got his sort of his fur up was the fact that that Sydney brought up the Cuck article that he wrote back in 2015, and I knew this because back when I was in the 21 convention, when I was still associated with them, and they brought Jack Murphy on as a speaker. Anthony brought Jack Murphy on as a speaker. I mean, I had known the guy and I was familiar with his book, Democrats Are Deplorable. I knew he was sort of in the same sphere as like, say, Mike Cernovich and some of these sort of, I get at the time they were calling them alt-right guys. This is 2015, 2016. Even Roosh was a part of it, who wanted desperately to be a part of that. Milo Yiannopoulos, I would definitely say. Jack Posobiec was definitely in that. And these are not guys who are necessarily in my wheelhouse. The only reason I know them is because, I know Jack because Jack wanted to be part of the red pill sort of sphere for a very long time prior to 2015. And Cernovich was definitely a red pill guy before he was juice bro guy, juicing. And then it was Wim Hof breathing. And then it was, I don't know, whatever the next product was. Oh, then it was Gorilla Mindset. And then it's like he's got his white label version of like nutrition supplements or something, which is Gorilla this or Gorilla that. And then he's, basically bankrolling the Red Pill movie with Cassie J along with Milo Yiannopoulos. That's why I know these people. So it's not because I have some sick, fascination with these people. I don't. It's just that they happen to cross over into the spheres that I happen to be a part of. And for the longest time, Cernovich and Jack really wanted to be a part of the early, I would say maybe 2009 to 2013 or 2014. Really wanted to be part of the red pill sphere. And by red pill, I mean like intersexual dynamics, game, seduction community. There's you can probably go find all kinds of videos of certainly Jack, but also Cernovich, where they're talking about, bitches ain't nothing but tricks and hoes, that kind of stuff. And people will go dig that up. But again, the internet never forgets, but people have very short attention spans, especially in the TLDR generation. So going back to 2015, speaking of which, never forgetting, I'm sure this is something that Jack would have hoped that everybody would have forgotten by now. But back in 2015, he wrote an article on his blog. I'm not going to post it here just because it's kind of immaterial to the point I want to make today. I'm prefacing today's topic with Jack because he's a good example of this. But that was almost 7 years ago. And of course, he deleted that blog post. It was about how he felt like he was more secure in his masculinity for allowing his wife, or not his girlfriend, his loving girlfriend, to go hook up with a guy on Tinder and go bang her brains. I mean, it was very graphic about it. I mean, I could read it to you. You could find this well enough online. You could certainly find it on Wayback Machine. But if you go and you look up like Jack Murphy cuck article, I don't know. I forget what, I don't know what the title is. I actually have a screen cap of it somewhere, but anyways, long story short, he had this article espousing the benefits and how proud he was to say that he was allowing his wife or girlfriend to go out and bang other guys, and was very specific in it. And that got brought up right around, I think, 2018, when he was a speaker at the 21 convention during that year. And that's when I became aware of it, because I had no idea. And people said, hey, how can you have a certified cuck on the 21 convention speaker list? And I'm like, I didn't know he was. And so then I finally, figured this stuff out. And I'm like, oh man, these are bad optics, man, for the 21 convention. And he was very chummy with Anthony Johnson during the 2019 debacle and everything else. I know was at least twice he spoke at the 21 convention. So from that point on, once I had my separation from that, I lost track of all those guys. I didn't know there's guys like Tanner Guzzi, or there's Goldman and certainly Jack, who I just, I'm just like, whatever, dude, I'm going to go back to work and end of conversation as far as I was concerned. And then he's finds his way back onto Tim, and, he's a brand of me. He's got his own masculinity brand. And this is a guy who prides himself on being sort of a man's man, a very tall guy. As you can see, the skunk beard is sort of his claim to fame, or his personal brand, I guess. And so to see him on, I was kind of actually surprised to see him on You Are Here. And apparently Sydney and Elijah had no idea what they were getting into. I think they probably just asked him on the show because they knew he was on Tim Pool, and maybe they just wanted to have an interesting guest on, blah, blah, blah. The result is the video that we started with today. And the reason why I started with that is because it's a perfect example of how you can still look at a guy and say, oh, that guy's a man's man, or he's a traditionalist, or he's got his liminal order. He's got the guys that get together and they go, have Sunday brunch after church or whatever, and just sort of pal around as men doing whatever men do. And then he loses sort of emotional, state control, right? Command presence. And it didn't take much to do that. It was just the sheer mention of a 2015 article that I would think that in 6 or 7 years of that being out in the wild on the internet, he would have something, to have a standard pat answer for something like that, rather than F you, heartfelt, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. That's just, I was actually kind of shocked too. I was like, wow, I wouldn't have expected that from him. And then later on, I come to find out through various sources, I'm not going to say who, but he stormed off the show and sort of took his toys and went home. And that right there, my friends, is what happens when you have a guy who is, ostensibly a masculine guy, conventionally masculine guy, who has been trained to be more emotional. And that's where we're going to start today. I'm going to get to David Buss's videos as well. I've got a video coming up from at least bits and pieces of videos. I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing, but I've got bits and pieces of videos from David Buss, his interviews from David Buss, and hopefully I'm not stepping on any copyright toes by doing so. I also have another video here, which I think is kind of interesting because it's emotion is a language. And as you guys recall, when I was on You Are Here, I was on there with Ariella Scarelli or whatever. I can't pronounce her last name. And there was a point where she was kind of talking over me. And I think I mentioned this on the show after that show on here. And I said, look, I've come to the point where I've learned my lesson. And I learned that, and I told you guys this back in 2017, 2018, when I was on the Pat Campbell show. And I allowed a feminist on his terrestrial radio show to sort of talk over me and get an emotional rise out of me. And I raised my voice and I was like, no, I'm trying to, yell over this person who's already yelling over me. It's not my show. It's Pat's show. And Pat has to be sort of like the traffic cop and all of that. And I was, of course, after that came out, and no, there is no archive of that unless you want to go try to get it from the Tulsa radio company that is no longer in business. It got bought out by Griffin. But people threw that back in my face and say, oh, you lost your shit, Rollo. Oh, man, she got a rise out of you. A real man doesn't do. And you know what? They're right. They were right. A real man doesn't allow that to happen. You can tell her one thing and up and down the other and wait for your moment. But by losing state control, you enter into an emotional language and an emotional appeal. And it's one thing if you have Ariella there, or you have a feminist on the other line on the end of the line in a radio show, and then you lose your shit. It's another thing to be provoked to that by something that's just dug up from your past that I would presume you already have an answer for, or you should be able to sort of at least pass it off or dismiss it in some way. But here we are. Here we are with F you, F this, heartfelt, blah, 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 storm off the show. And that right there is definitely an emotional rise. That's an emotional, I'm up and out of here. It's kind of like getting Frank Castled, right? Why is it that now when I'm not saying that when Myron kicks these girls off the show, that's an emotional reaction, but usually it's state control. Myron, you say what you want to about Fresh and Fit, say what you want to about the formulaic, nature of that show, but Myron doesn't take any shit. I've seen him. I can remember, I think it was, it was it was March or maybe it was January of last year. And I was on there and I was going to, the show's still up, I'm sure. I was going to go on there with two women and myself and Fresh. And there was another lady there, another girl, another gal. Thank you, Erin Clary, for sticking that in my brain. And I talked to one of the girls was like a lawyer, or she had some sort of like legal background. And her friend, I don't know who she was, but she seemed kind of like a club girl. And she was kind of mouthing off to Myron at that time. And before the show even started, he'd said, you know what, you're out of here. I'm concerned with the quality of my show. I want you out of here. And basically she, up and kicked her out. And that was the first time, at least that I'm aware of a Frank Castling at Fresh and Fit. Now that happened before the video started, so you won't see any. There's no video evidence of it. But I was there. Fresh was there, and there's lots of people to corroborate it. But he ended up kicking this woman off because he's like, you know what, out. And I can remember also back in August when he and I were prepping for the Grape show, the infamous Grape show, in the beginning of August, and. Sorry, Torsha, I'm going to sell you out here, but Torsha was in the kitchen with us, and we were trying to sort of, get our homework done, right? I mean, be on spot because we had to be bulletproof for that show. And she's, yammering on, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And I'm just kind of like, and Myron's like, can you go sit in the front room, please? Like, just get the fuck out for a little while. I mean, not mean, but just sort of, in other words, get out of here for a minute so that we can actually focus on what the hell it is that we're doing. Now that is a masculine, I would say anyways, conventionally masculine way of saying, you know what, this is, you're in my frame, and the behavior you're exhibiting right now is not what I want right now. We got work to do. Please go, quiet woman, men are speaking, right? And that's basically Myron. That's a way to have handled that. So when we say like, well, Myron kicks girls off the show all the time. Yeah, because he learned a lesson, a valuable lesson, I think, is that it's kicking a woman off on the show certainly demonstrates higher value, I would say, than just like kicking her off beforehand when nobody can see it as an illustration or example. That's not necessarily an emotional appeal, although maybe I'm sure sometimes it might be, because it's just like, screw it, I'm done with this, get out of here. But when I'm looking at this video with Jack, this is a loss of emotional control and a loss of knowing what to say. And so I had to scrub back through the video to see what was going on prior to this almost a 2-hour show. I thank you for watching my long ass shows, but I'm only going to go to find out what the prefacing of this whole thing is. And so I kind of scrubbed through it a little bit, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of tension already, him being on the show. And that kind of came to a head right there at the very end of the show. And I thought, well, it's because he got provoked, as I did. Okay. Mea culpa. By, information, by something that he thought was an attack. And literally it wasn't an attack. It was something that she would just, she was reading Superchats. She did the same thing with me. She doesn't know me. She did homework on me enough to know that they wanted me on the show. But she doesn't know me personally. She doesn't know my background. She doesn't know anything that I've done. I've been in this. Very few people do, honestly. I've been doing this for 20 years. And by the end of this year, it'll be 20 years. But of course, the response is whenever I post something about this or I talk about this, everybody wants to come to Jack's defense and say, "Oh, he did what he told her." No, he didn't. He had an emotional. She got an emotional rise out of him without knowing which she wasn't even intending to do. He allowed that information and that question, and being on a very popular, very big show. Let's just say it's growing, a very largely growing audience of a show. Hell, it's on Blaze Network. Allowed that to sort of get his goat, right? And that was the response. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because this is what I did more or less on Pat Campbell's show. And it's what I avoided when I was on You Are Here with Ariella. And I think that that's a really tough thing for a lot of guys right now to sort of process, because most likely, especially if you're watching this show, but if you're a product of the last, 3 or 4 generations of men, you've more than likely been taught to express your emotions and to get in touch with your feminine side and get in touch with your emotional side. And, behave and communicate and talk and think like a woman. And this is thinking like a woman. This is being put on the spot and not knowing what to say. This is who hurt you. When women get to the point where they have no counter argument, whether I'm arguing with them or I'm debating with them, or I'm not even debating, I'm just showing statistics and numbers and features and everything else, and connecting dots that are uncomfortable to really process for women. That's when you get who hurt you. That's when you get, boy, mommy didn't give you enough love. And what that is an attempt. I mentioned this before. It's an attempt to reframe the conversation or the debate from a rational language into an emotional language. So, okay, what that says is, okay, I'm done with your stats and features and communicating this way because I can't win. But I could win if you'll come over to my way of thinking and start talking the way I do and start placing emotion and judgment and belief and feels before reals. If you come over to that way of communicating, then I can win because I'm a girl and I'm supposed to win. I'm all about, because the most perfect way to be as a human being, the ideal state is to be more feminine. For you, particularly, Mr. Man. And what happens is, as we've said before, we are for the fourth generation, maybe third generation for sure. We raise our boys as if they're defective girls. Part of that raising, part of that conditioning is prioritizing emotion before reason, which would be your natural proclivity had you not been taught by Disney and by Pixar and by whatever music you're listening to and whatever movies you're watching and whatever your mom said to you, whatever your pastor said to you, whatever however you were raised in a female primary capacity. That's what's contributed to you prioritizing emotion before reason. So you think instinct, emotion, and then reason. What happened? And this is a real trick. And I had to learn this myself too. I'm not saying I have I'm some superhero. I have some superpower. It took me a while to figure this out too. Is that my natural proclivity right now, certainly at my age anyhow, is to prioritize and think like a guy, conventionally masculine thinking, instinct, reason, and then how did I feel about it? How did that whole thing, how did the cards shake out kind of thing? Whereas for women, it's instinct, emotion. How is this making me feel? and then later going, oh, I better process this data and think of the best, course of action. That's the process there. Unless, that's a natural process, unless generationally you're taught the other thing. You're taught to express your emotions and you're supposed to think like a girl because that's a better way to think. And that's how your female teachers taught you. And here we have the results. And, again, I'm not immune to it. At least I can say I have learned from that. You want to know, when we talk about like the red pill paradigm or the red pill awareness, I think part of that needs to be about how you're processing things that are coming to you. Like, give yourself permission to actually be a man. Now, people are going to say this, and because I already saw this in the comments, they're going to say, well, he was a man. He told her to F off, right? Okay, but why? Why was he provoked to that response? And the response is he just simply didn't know what to do in that moment, and that was his default reaction. So, take it for whatever it is. But that was, I felt anyways, that was a good, I think that was a merge. I think that was a good example of prioritizing, like I said, ostensibly really hyper masculine guys defaulting to emotionalism. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit today because it gets into how we define what a guy ought to be, what a man should be. Should a man be emotional and vulnerable and in touch with his feelings and everything else? Or should he prioritize emotion before reason? Because that's what we've been teaching, generation after generation of young men up to this point. And I think the product of that is we see this current generation of lost, rudderless, purposeless guys. I got into this, by the way, and then here's my next build up, in case you were wondering. I'm building this up because I was on with Michaela Peterson on Thursday morning for about 2 hours. And she contacted me. She got in touch with me, and Myron kind of facilitated that because I think she and I think her and Dr. Jordan Peterson will be on the Fresh and Fit podcast. I think they're scheduled. Don't quote me on that, but I think they're scheduled for like February. So she hit me up. And she wanted me, but essentially all she really wanted me to do was clear the air. She wanted to clear her name from the Kilter Party episode I did about 3 weeks ago, I think. And of course, she's taking it on that whole episode was not about her. Now, I think a lot of people say, well, you used her on the thumbnail. Yeah, I did. Of course I did. Who else would I use? I was using her as an illustration, just as I'm using Jack Murphy here as an illustration for today. Now, again, I'm going to think about Michaela Peterson. It was actually a really good interview. I thought we had back and forth, but she's 29 years old. She's still a very young, she's still, in some ways, I think Michaela is still kind of operating under an adolescent social skill set. And hopefully it was a Zoom call. It was pre-recorded. You can't get it yet. Whenever it's made live, however they edit it down, I don't know. I think I did pretty well. I think I held my own pretty much on that, but really it was just an opportunity for her to say, hey man, I'm not like Casey Anthony. I would never kill my kid. Well, that's not what I said. And had you watched the entire video, you would understand that, but probably somewhere along the line, someone along the line said, hey, yo, you got to watch this. He's talking shit about you. Right. So he cleared the air. And actually I thought it was pretty interesting. Her side of the story with Andrew Tate. Now, I've talked to Andrew personally, and I know what his side is. It's interesting to see what she talks about there, too. Let's see. What are you talking about here? Rollo, hypothetically, in the future, because of extreme tech developments, everyone has lamb is resource. Everyone has lamb is and resource and money. How would dating look like? I don't know what that gibberish is. Extreme tech development. Everyone has lamb is and resources. What does dating look like? Dude, here, wait. 1 second, please. We've got to consult the try again later. Okay, we'll come back to that because, dude, how the hell do I know? What's going to happen, Rollo? What's going to happen, Rollo Damas? I don't know, man. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you, man. Let's see. Gotta catch up. God damn, man. Are we already 30 minutes in? Good to see you. Thanks for everything. You are welcome, sir. Mr. Jason, who is always welcome on this show. Missouri man, why do women change their hair color after a relationship or a big life event? They always let the world know about it too by posting about it. Because more than likely, they didn't feel like they got the attention that they wanted when they were saddled with the relationship. Remember that when a woman gets into a long-term relationship, the attention that she's getting is no longer, well, it shouldn't be anyways, maybe it still is, but theoretically speaking, on paper, she should be getting her props and her affirmations, and her loving and her affection and her attention needs are provided by only one person, the guy that she's in the relationship with, right? So what happens when that guy's gone? Well, we got to go appeal to the broadest audience. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to go get a tattoo. I'm going to go dye my hair fuchsia. That's more or less it's an appeal for attention is what it is. Glenn Lawrence. Hey, man. Big shout out to MLD, Paul from Apex Mindset, Thor, and the rest of the guys from Hot Dude Con San Diego last night. Yeah, I wish I could have been there. I was hoping that Colty Bra was going to be there too. If you don't know who he is, go look him up on Twitter. I would very much, if I can work it out, because he's a sledder too. We're going to get our snowmobiles out there and we'll hopefully, because we're in for a real good storm this year. So we might actually get a good season. Pat Stedman's Polish passport. Thanks, dude. You follow me everywhere. I love you too. Merry Christmas, Pat Stedman's Polish passport. Masculinity is not toxic, but there is such a thing as faux toxic masculinity. All right. To see an example, go watch The Lumber Cuck, which is Jack Murphy's nickname. Jack Murphy trying so hard to show you how to be a real man by getting triggered and being an obnoxious guest. Let me tell you something else there, since Pat Stedman's Polish passport brought this up. A lot of people I posted this on Instagram and then in the comments of that actual video itself. Of course, that's all anybody focused on. Everybody scrubs through, right? To like, was it 216 in the timeline? And everyone wants to say, well, yeah, he should have done that. Yeah, a man is speaking finally. And then I'm like, and I am like kind of joking and saying, whoa, slow your roll there, Jack. All she did was read a freaking super chat. It's not like she was like, now I got him. Watch me. Gotcha, Jack. That's gotcha, bitch. It's not one of those moments. Sorry, I got to get to my sound pad here. It's not one of those moments. She didn't know. Genuinely didn't know. And I know, and I talked to her, I DM her and everything else. She knew. She didn't know what was going on. She had to be filled in later. Even Elijah had to be filled in later as to what was going on. But of course, the way people take it is they all, especially in as it's sort of team man versus team woman, then of course they think that it was like sort of malicious, or there had to be some dirty dealings going on. And as I said, it wasn't me. You can go look at the super chats in that actual show and you can see that is not me. And I forget the guy's name, but he's already fessed up to it as well. So I wasn't like I was, trying to throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. But man, I will be happy to step up and put that on my Instagram, or put that on my Twitter, or put that right here. And so what everybody says is, well, Rollo's simping for Sydney. Dude, let me explain something to all of you right now, okay? Just because you're red pill, just because you're red pill aware, just because you're black pill, you're a doomer, you're a MGTOW, you're an MRA, you're a trad this, you're whatever it is, and you're chasing excellence instead of chasing women. Got it. Thank you very much. But just because I drop a woman's name in a text, or in an Instagram, or in a whatever on social media, does not mean I'm simping for that girl. You can actually use a woman's name and not be simping for. I know that's a foreign alien concept to guys, but that can actually happen. And when I'm joking around and I'm whenever I talk about how Torsh is my baby mama, right? Or I say, oh yeah, Torsh is going to be my magician's assistant or something like that. I am not simping for Torsha. Okay. I'm not her pay pig. If anything, she's paying me. She should be paying me. Right. But because I use that name, I could just, let's pull a name out of the sky. Jennifer. Oh, Jennifer. He must be simping for a girl named Jen. Like, I can't even say a female name without somebody going, sounds like you're simping. That's it. Honestly, guys, that says more about you than it does about me. So let's keep going here because I need to catch up. You guys are insane. We only have 920 people in the chat right now in the show, but we have a lot of supers. You know, it's kind of a blessing and a curse that StreamYard will let you go all the way back to the beginning of the chat stream now because it actually makes the show even longer. Sam Whiskey Rollo, the media is now saying that the metaverse has a groping problem. You didn't see my tweet on that, Sam? I tweeted about that. My tweet was this, like what was it? It's a Washington Post. I can't remember what the article was on, but this, I guess there's some women or whatever saying that they were virtually groped in the metaverse. In AI or whatever, artificial, AI, AR, augmented reality or virtual reality, VR, right? And so my joke was this, that by that logic, if I get shot and killed in Call of Duty, then I'm entitled to veterans benefits for my combat trauma PTSD. Give me some money. Like if that's the definition, if that's where we're going to go, then give me some money. There's a lot of guys who've been traumatized by, you know what traumatized me? Anybody ever play Alien Isolation? I just picked that up because it just came out on mobile. Oh my God. I know it's an old game, granted, but I'm just now getting into it because I love Alien, the franchise anyways. That is a scary ass freaking game, man. I'm traumatized. Give me some money. Can I have some money too? Because I feared for my life. I got PTSD. Please. That was some scary shit. It still is. I haven't finished the game. Wet beaver looking for wood. Oh, dude, really? Here.
Guilty.
You get one of those, wet beaver. You know, there's I don't know if in your town, but there's a restaurant franchise called Lucky Beaver. Off topic, I heard you mention that you might revisit, edit, or something. Book one. It's already under edit. Funny you should say so. It's already in the process right now. It's actually I'm through to. Andrew and I are working on, not Andrew, it's not Andrew Tate, but the other guy who's the editor. I think we're up to like chapter 8 right now. So, yes, that's in the works. Thank you very much. Can you do another episode on infidelity? You want me to? I'll be happy to. When I do infidelity episodes, it also I have to include like jealousy and envy as well. So, how can a self-important man with options be monogamous, or is it a matter of discipline? It's a matter of discipline, particularly now. If that's the choice that you decide, I think one of the first things you need to ask yourself when it comes to like considering monogamy, how old are you? Number one, don't consider monogamy until you're 30. Seriously. And then second of all, why do you see you need to ask yourself these questions. Why do you see monogamy as a goal state? Is it a goal state for you? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's how did you come to that? That's what I want people to focus on. Do you believe that red pill overlaps with green spuds? Narcissistic personality disorder. No. Is narcissism an additional layer of issues, or do typical relationships end with gaslighting, manipulation, and devaluation? Funny you should say that, green spuds, because that's exactly the conversation we're going to have when we get into the Dr. David Buss section of today's show. So hang on, we're going to get to that. We will actually answer that question today. And PTSD. What is this? I have PTSD from being rejected. There you go. Yeah, pornography. If that's your virtual reality, then I guess maybe you don't. I wonder if you can sue, like if you can virtually sue somebody, or if you can be held accountable or liable legally in legal terms for like being groped, like sexual assault in the metaverse. Can you then not sue Pornhub for your pornography addiction? Like, where do we draw the line? At what point is it like, okay, you decided to do this, you're here and nobody actually touched you in the real world? Future, everyone is rich. What the F women look for? Dude, all right, dude, you're gone. No, we're going out. Bye.
Bye, Felicia.
There you go. Let's see. Anybody else? Oh, no, that's not it. Let's keep going. And that was, what was that one? PTSD. I love that. All right, good enough. Let's keep going here. I want you guys to also, so on the topic of emotional communication, Well, Jack was exhibit A. Here's exhibit B. Okay.
Assault was on me because I set my discovery wrong. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're projecting. What I'm trying to say is that when you invite a 27-year-old man you don't know to your apartment to have quick sex that minute, not like even get to know, not even for a drink, that's not going to lead to the lasting.
You've crossed the line. I'm sorry. You've crossed the line.
How did I cross the line?
This is an emotional.
What you just said was so slut shaming. And I wanted to
see how it's slut shaming. Tell me how I'm slut shaming.
You know, when we say, look, I'm sorry, we got to inject a little bit of humor into today's show. Okay. Remember when we always say, you know, or I've said this before on Myron's show, on my own show, but Myron actually will talk to the girls like face to face and say, you know what, when it comes to slut shaming, it's women that actually do the most slut shaming of other women. Well, here we are. Except I think this is funny because it's called the Femsplainer podcast in the first place.
Tell me how I'm slut shaming.
I will tell you in a second. I will tell you in a second. You interrupt me a lot too, which I wish you wouldn't do. I wish you would allow me to finish my thoughts before you start talking again. Can I do that?
Go ahead.
Now, imagine if I had been on You Are Here and Ariel is talking over me. Excuse me, can I finish my point? Imagine if my response had been that. That's what I'm talking about. The difference between a rational debate or reasonable debate or like clearly no one has ever been on like, what was it, debate team or had taken formal logic, you know, classes, I guess, and even in like community college, right?
So I would love for this to work out. I would love to be able to talk to you, you know, in a way that's positive and helps people listening who've been through these things as I have to know that they're not alone. I feel from our conversation and the things that you've said to me so far, I feel judged by you and I feel slut shamed by you. And these are things that I have a right to feel based on what you've said. And
problematic.
You, I think, are in the position as the interviewer to want to know why I feel that way, not to argue that I shouldn't. But
I didn't. I asked you, why do you feel that way?
Okay. Maybe you would learn something more, not just about me, but about this culture, about what young women, young people are going through. If you would listen to what I have to say.
You're not a good listener.
And also to listen to what I have to say about what you said and not be defensive and not think that, you know, I'm just overreacting to a bad review or something.
Give me the word.
And once again, that person knew me and we have a weird history. It's something so petty. It's not even worth talking about. But people who know you and had little disputes over time with you should not be writing reviews of your book. So can I tell you what I think is slut shaming about what you said?
Go ahead.
And what I think that I'm pretty sure a lot of my friends and young women friends would think is slut shaming about what you said. What I believe you said.
Appeal to a mass audience.
What were you thinking?
Logical fallacy.
You
the way I do.
Discovery at men in their 20s, and you're old. And so
you're my age, so I call myself old too.
Some
58.
Okay, so you're saying that I'm old, so I'm not.
No, I'm just saying it's a big disparity for male or female.
Oh, and what is okay? So here's my questions going through my mind when you say these things to me. So, I mean, so what is wrong with that? I mean, I don't really get what's wrong with that to you, but and what were you thinking? Because when you had these young men come over to your house and you just had them come over to have quickie sex. Well, I don't know where in my book you got that's your projection, because there
was incident after incident. It's not.
Okay. I'll stop. I know people are like, oh my God, when is this over? Killing me. You're killing me, Rollo. I know. I had to use that. I'm sorry I had to use that, but that was like the most perfect example of emotional conversation. I feel nothing that came out of both of these women's mouths And thank you, whoever sent that to me. That was like Nancy Joe Sale. I think the podcast is called like Femsplaining or something like that. It's a no-name. It's like, it's not even a farm league podcast, but I thought the conversation was really, again, a good illustration, indicative anyways, indicative of an emotional conversation between women. Now, imagine when men adopt that kind of emotional language, that kind of emotional style of relating to, well, yeah, we're vibing, right? You probably hear this all the time. Even Hotep Jesus says this, if I'm vibing with a girl. Vibing is really just the name, the euphemism we give when when men are speaking an emotional language to women that they are understanding. And then there's this back and forth. It's like, oh, here's a guy that gets it. He just gets it. He understands how to speak my language. But the vibing part comes from the guy who actually knows what's going on. He's speaking the language. It's almost like my native tongue is English, and I can speak Spanish just like enough to get myself into trouble, or I can certainly read Spanish, but it's not my native language. Now, once you get to the point where you can sort of like speak a foreign language and like without having to think about it, that's when you become fluent in it, right? Well, men are never fluent in women, or are generally, I shouldn't say never, are generally not fluent in female language, and yet women expect them to be so. Now, when she was saying here for a minute ago, what was it? You're not listening, or listen. You're not a good. I was joking about it, right? You're not a good listener. Men don't listen. Yeah, they don't, because we don't speak your language, not innately. It's not our mother tongue, right? We speak men. We say what we mean, and we mean what we say. We speak the language of overtness. Women speak the language of covert feelings. Men speak the language of overt information, and then we figure out how we felt about it. And right here, the priority, as I've said 1,000 times, I said this in the communications episode a long time ago, which I really need to go back over again. But when women are speaking in womanese, right, it's not because in some cases they're being coquettish, I guess, or they're being sort of like, subterfuge, right? There's sort of this indirectness or this passive aggressiveness, or however you want. It's like you're not really saying what you mean. You're just sort of beating around the bush kind of thing. But that's the native tongue of women, because women are better in most ways, I should say, at communication when it comes to men, depending on what the goal of that communication is. Brain-wise, the way women's brains are wired, they get more information from communication than men do. So a woman can get information from subcommunications, how you're dressed, what your body posture is, what the tone of your voice, how you're holding yourself, what's your demeanor, I guess. There's a lot of ways that women interpret communication. For men, we prioritize, innately we prioritize information, the content of whatever it is that we're conversing about. And for women, it's how did it feel? I feel like you're not hearing me. No, I'm hearing you. I'm physically, my ears, they fucking work. Okay. I'm hearing you. I'm just not speaking your language. I'm just not interpreting it because it's not my native tongue. And so when you see something like this video right here with these two girls, that's the language of women. And I don't think we get enough of that. I don't think we have enough of, I shouldn't say get enough. We certainly have enough of it. We don't see it illustrated to us that much, because we're locked into sort of seeing, the red pill this, the blue pill this, the black pill that, the gold pill this, the white pill that, blah, 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 whatever your lens is. But we need to, I think in some ways, even with regards to the red pill, we need to step back from it and say, what is going on here? And be as be fucking Mr. Spock about it. Kill your emotions and look at this from a completely practical, cold, logical perspective. Why is it that they're prioritizing this? What's going on in all of this? And guys will say, well, I don't have the patience for that. Screw them. If girls want to get with me, they should speak my language. And that, I understand. The guys don't understand, how come women are so, they're so duplicitous and they're fickle, and they're, how come they can't just say what they mean and mean what they say? You know why? Because they'd be guys. They'd be guys, and you wouldn't want to have anything to do with them. Like that girl on Steve Harvey, when I did the Steve Harvey episode, and we were looking at the lady who was 35 years old and she couldn't find a man, and she was a business professional, and she had she had made a lot of money. She was well educated. She had built herself up to be a quote unquote alpha female. Yeah, she's not. She's a man, and she communicates, or she tries to anyway. She communicates like a woman, but her mentality has been conditioned to be more mannish, to be more masculinized. And so there, as a result, at 35, she doesn't understand why she's lonely and childless, and probably has a very small prospect, an incredibly small prospect for getting married and actually doing the things that she thinks she needs to do. And she doesn't realize she's made the choice that, that's the way things are. However, she still communicates like a woman, but she doesn't understand why men won't come over to her way of communicating. Why won't men just why can't I just find a turnkey relationship? It's kind of like guys saying, well, I got to find a quality woman. There are no quality women. You make a quality woman. You can build it, but you don't get a turnkey relationship, whether you're a man or a woman in that case. What did you say? You often point at the sexual revolution, advent of hormonal birth control as a big cause of gynocentrism. That was the catalyst for it. Could you go into more detail about this? I have several times in the past. What exact dominoes fell after this? You know what? Here's what you do. Go and look at last week's live stream, because I was very detailed about that. In fact, I showed you the history, the timeline of what happened when, and where all the spikes in the timeline was. It 1900 to 2021. You look at where the spikes for like the rise in divorce right after 1965. The decline in marriage right after 1965. I've already done that episode, P. Will, but do go look at that. I've done, please, I did a lot of work on that. Catching up. A Nigerian prince would marry a 50-year-old lady for love. Yeah. Only if the email was convincing. Now what do you want, Moon Kamar? You said you'll discuss hypergamy is eugenics. I'm waiting. Well, you're going to wait a little bit longer. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Hold on. Wait, I don't mean to be dismissive. Wait till about halfway point. When I get to the stuff with David Buss, it will actually answer that. Sometimes I preempt myself. When will be the next version of book 1 be out? I don't know. Probably 2022. Are you making it bulletproof to misinterpretation? No, because there's no way I can possibly ever do that. Because you know what? If you don't read the book in the first place, it's always going to be misinterpreted. Thank you very much, Kevin Ray Wilder, and all of your fuckhead associates. Yes. If you don't read the book, you can expect it to be misinterpreted. That's what I'm going to say about that. What is the reason? And enjoy reading. Well, I'm actually doing a second version, or a second edition of book 1, because it is literally the Bible of the Red Pill right now. And I need to go back in and chop out some of the $10 words, man. I need to go in and make sure the syntax and the grammar and everything else is 100. I want it to be bulletproof, man. It's like, that's the book that everybody goes to. So I want to make it as perfect as possible. And you got to remember, when I put that out, when I published that book in 2013, I thought that was going to be the only book I ever did. So Rollo, Renegade Show. Just want to see Gunnery Sergeant Hartman enter the chat and dress these women down. What's your major malfunction, sprinkled cheek? Oh man, somebody get me that. Somebody get me that, please. You know what? I really appreciate Super Chats, and I really appreciate all your support, and I really appreciate it when you sub to my Patreon. But you know what I appreciate even more? When you take the time to give me a badass sound drop like this.
You're goddamn right.
Yes, thank you. What do you think about misandry? The misandry score for movies, series, games, and woke relatability. I don't know. I've never seen it. Is there an app? There's an app for that now. I wouldn't doubt it, but I don't need an app. I have these. I have the red pill lens, right? Have guys in the manosphere tried to make women understand the red pill by speaking their language, appealing to emotions similar to what PUAs do? No. Good question, though. Because that's what a lot of people say, especially when it comes to like issues of like direct game versus like, I guess, formal game, for lack of a better term. Like if you look at Troy Francis, or you look at James Tusk, you look at early PUAs, you look at even, I guess, Mystery from back in the day anyways. I don't know where he's at right now. But if you look at Nick Krauser, if you look at Tom Torero, I'm rattling off some names of guys that I used to know anyways. A lot of people accuse those guys of, oh, you're just pandering to women. You're just trying to be more like a woman. You're trying to talk their language. That's being inauthentic. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Got laid, don't care. That was the mentality back then. So by speaking in an emotional language, that just because you speak Spanish as your second language does not mean you forget English. Does that make sense to you? So if my native tongue is conventional masculinity and I learn to speak womanese, I learn to speak an emotional language. Does that necessarily mean that my headspace is in that emotion, or is it that I can communicate and I can use that to leverage it to my own advantage? That's the difference between direct game, where it's like, direct game is this, right? It's like sort of like, just get to the point. It's just to, the point is this. Hey, I saw you from across the room. You look attractive. You look like somebody I want to get to know. Hey, want to go have a drink, blah, 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 whatever. Straight up. None of this. Hey, did you know there was a fight outside? Boy, it was crazy. What's the first car you ever had, right? What's the best car you ever had? Let's do the cube, like that kind of stuff, which works. It can, but what are you the most comfortable in? And most people just, like, especially guys who don't understand game, or they don't have the patience to learn game, they tend to opt for like really blunt. That's man game, right? That's a man does it this way, direct, get down there, get down to the point. Are you DTF? Yes. Okay, good. Let's go. My place or yours. It does not necessarily mean like just because, okay, here's a better example. If you're a guy who's like a proponent, you're Alan Roger Curry, right? You're was it mode one? It's all upfront and in your face. It's like, let's get down to the point. I don't want any game players or time wasters or whatever. And you say, hey babe, this is where I'm at. You look attractive. I think you're good. Let's go back. Are you DTF? Now, if a woman says, yes, I am. I think that'd be a great idea. I'm free at 4:00 and I will be there. And what would you like me to bring a 6-pack of your favorite beer? Right. If that was the case, would you say that woman is speaking men's language? Like when you see a tomboy, is that woman actually a man? When you hear Sheryl Sandberg talk about like business stuff, or talk about how, women need to be, alpha females, is she speaking the language of women or of men? Maybe in her delivery she is, but we don't ask those questions of the most obvious counter to that, which is if a woman says this, like when a woman says, get away from me, you creep, right? If she says that, she's transferring herself over into masculine language, because there needs to be no miscommunication of what she's communicating to you. Get away from me. Like if she cries, if she screams, if she yells, if she's having an emotional outburst, generally when women go, because women default to that, but when you have brought them to that point, or they go, who hurt you? What that is it's transfer. Like up to that point, you're having a conversation in a masculine way. If a woman says, yeah, that's really good data, I think that's great, we should make a spreadsheet about that. Let's be really analytical and scientific about this whole thing. Is she speaking in a man's language, or is she speaking in a woman's language? And if she is speaking in a man's language, why do we not say she's being disingenuous? That's the thing, is can you speak another language and still be genuine, or still think in your own language? I think that's the real case right there. And more guys can't. So let's just, I'm actually agreeing with you more. And I don't think it's so much a PUA thing. I think it's just the way that we raise our boys, as if they're defective girls. You want to know why men, like guys like Nicholas Cruz, go and shoot up their high schools? They're just doing what they've been conditioned to do, express themselves emotionally. Only he expressed it with, an assault rifle. And yes, it was an assault rifle. And in the expression of the emotion was anger, frustration. I'm frustrated and angry. Express your emotions, Nick. Okay. That's the expression. He was just doing what he was taught. He just didn't have anybody to sort of guide him or tell him to control his emotions, to keep him in check, instead of like, let your freak flag fly. All right. Let us get. Hi, Torsia. Look, I mentioned Torsia. You're sipping. Please break down for us layman's Dr. Buzz. Okay, I'm getting to that today. Right today. Don't worry, it's coming in hot and fast. Yeah, well, we'll get to that. Thank you very much. P, I see the episode that you did a good job pointing out birth control, but didn't catch why. Episode. Okay, well, we'll get to it. Let's see. Vinny, direct doesn't mean you skip seduction. Yeah, well, it is. I mean, direct actually is a form of game. I think too many people think it shouldn't be. I'm glad you brought that up because in book 5 that I'm writing right now about, Player's Handbook, like about game, I go into very great detail about the difference between formal game and direct game. Direct game actually is a derivative of formal game. It's, well, all of this stuff in game was working and I'm tired of doing, multiple approaches and trying to go through and wasting a lot of time to get to the same point I was going to get to anyways. Let's just see if I can just be straightforward and get a girl into bed. And bam, it worked, at least for some guys anyways. I think that when it comes to, and this is completely off topic, but I think that if you are a proponent of any particular style of game, I think you need to learn formal game first. And then once you understand the principles and the foundations of fundamentals of it, then you can move to direct game rather than the other way around. Because if direct game is like the hammer, right? And everything looks like a nail. Whereas I think there's more versatility in a formal game. So, but I'm not shitting on direct game. I think it's actually very functional. In fact, even Troy and I think even James Tusk would probably say learn direct game. I would say you kind of got it backwards, but neither here nor there. Would you say knowing womanese and game are somewhat the same thing? No. It's game is the leveraging, game is the tactics, game is the strategy. Knowing how, and part of that strategy is definitely knowing that, but it is not the same thing. It's one serves the other. Let's just say that. It's like think of it as like an element of game, I guess. What did you put here? Oh, okay, I got to that. Okay, so let's get on to the rest of today's topics. Okay, now before I get to David Buss, I have to put this video on here first. Okay, because again, we're talking about not so much emotion, but just how we are in a feminine primary, women are wonderful social order right now, and I'm going to get to why that. Actually, you know what? Let me do that first. There is an effect. Now, I haven't. This is the Wikipedia definition of it. There's other ones too, but let me, there it is. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of it. Maybe you're aware of this and maybe you're not. I'm going to show you something here. There we go. All right. This is what's known as the women are wonderful effect. And this is going to sort of be a precursor for the rest of this show today. Okay. So the women are wonderful effect is this. Okay. I'm not going to read the whole damn thing, but here we go. Women are wonderful effect is the phenomenon found in psychology and sociological research, which suggests that people associate more positive attributes with women compared to men. The bias reflects an emotional bias towards women as a general case. Now, whenever I talk about how there is a separate standard of justice for women than there is for men, this is the root of it. The phrase was coined by Alice Eagley and Antonio Muldinic, I hope I'm saying that right, in 1994, after finding that both male and female participants tend to assign positive traits to women, with female participants showing a far more pronounced bias. Positive traits were assigned to men by participants of both genders, but to a far lesser degree. The authors supposed that the positive general evaluation of women might derive the association between women and nurturing characteristics. This bias is suggested as a form of misandry, benevolent misogyny, the latter being a concept within the theoretical framework of ambivalent sexism. So I wanted to make sure that was, we covered that, because whenever I talk about the women are wonderful phenomenon, or the theoretical, let's just say, there's actually, that was where it began, was in 1994. There's other research that has shown something very similar. And I'm going to sort of catch this up, because that's 1994. I do want to throw this on here. And where did that go? Our good friend Rolf had something to say about this. Oh, we got to get into the science of emotions here in just a second. Here we go. Okay, so this is it. Women are wonderful. Thank you very much. This is from Rolf Deegan. Now he's I believe Rolf is I've used him before. I believe he's a evolutionary psychologist, but his Twitter, I follow him on Twitter because he throws up stories like this all the time. Both men and women rated research findings that described sex differences that were flattering to women as more congenial and judged by research, revealing them to be higher in quality. All right. I'm not going to read the rest of this, but it is an online library. This is the psychological thing. If you want the link, hit me up later and I'll give it to you. But just so you know, there are other more contemporary studies about the women are wonderful dynamic that they picked up on in 1994. And that's just one, like a tip of the iceberg in all of this. Now, why is Rollo saying all this? Well, because we process emotions differently. And I'll show you exactly why here in a second. In my fourth book, excuse me one second. In my fourth book, there is a section in there, and I lifted this from my good friend Whisper, who gave me permission to do so. But there's a part in Religion, the book 4, called Big Head Babies. And Big Head Babies is just in a nutshell. It's like the reason why we have gender dimorphism amongst human beings, the reason why we have gender-specific roles, the reason why women tend to be the more nurturing, or we want to protect women. You've heard me say this before, the innate male protector dynamic of women is fundamentally linked to big head babies. Big head babies is this, is if you have a smart species or smart animal, you need a lot of brain, you need a lot of neurons, and you need a lot of connections, and that has to start early in the gestation period, and so it takes a long time. So there you're looking at 9 months gestation for a human being. After that, human babies' heads are gigantic compared to other animals, so, relatively speaking. And so that requires women to give birth, to go into labor, to have wider hips, and to be able to deliver a child and still survive the experience. And then once the child is born, that child is effectively helpless. That toddler, that newborn child is effectively helpless for, whenever a child can get to self-sufficiency, maybe 5 to 7 years old. I mean, it can feed itself and run around. But comparatively speaking, if a pony is born, like a newborn horse, within a matter of hours, it can run around and it can get away from danger, and it can follow mama around. Now, it's not fully developed, it's not an adult, but at least it is in some way self-sufficient, but at the price of being smart. So how do you protect the women? Well, you have men who have an innate predisposition to protect women, to protect the incubators of the next generation. It's also the fundamental basis for like the war brides dynamic, which is, kill all the men folk in the tribe, kill all the boys, and then take all the fertile aged women and reintegrate them into your tribe. And therefore your tribe will grow and their tribe will be dead. And it is essentially DNA warfare on a grander scale, I think, but that's just basically how it is. So how do you facilitate that? How do women survive? Well, you get the war brides dynamic. So it's the same thing. Like, why, when I talk about the male protector dynamic, we see women as wonderful. We see women as the life givers. That's how women get covert power. That's why they're the mysterious forces of nature, right? The Oracle at Delphi. That's how you get the feminine mystique. That's how you get women are unknowable. You just got lucky. That's how so we tend to apply kind of this mysticism to the female existence. And we want to protect that. We want to secure that. Men want to secure that for sure. Because we want to know that the kid's ours. But the fundament of this whole thing is, well, human beings have big heads, and to have a race of intelligent, simians like us, that's just the price of admission. So we have to be able to do that. So how do you facilitate that once the baby's born? Protect the child, the beta buck side of hypergamy, right? Protection, provisioning, and parental investment. It complements survival right then and there. So that is an innate response. That's part of our evolutionary firmware. And that's really what those studies are getting at. Why is it that we think of women as being wonderful? Why do we have a bias towards women? And of course, they want to say it's about nurturing, and that's certainly part of it. But it's also, if she's a hot piece of ass and I want to get with that, it's also solving a reproductive problem. Whether you have any shot at actually having sex with that hot girl is immaterial. Another thing, and Sterling Cooper has said this before, is that when you have beautiful women around you, surrounding you all the time, your testosterone levels go higher, which is true. When men get married, their testosterone levels drop. And when they get divorced, those testosterone levels go back up. Wow, surprise, surprise. I can show you the research data for that as well. So it's not about, oh, you got to feel better about yourself and this and that. It's not, that's social constructionism. I'm looking at nuts and bolts right here. And so the women are wonderful dynamic finds its roots in evolutionary reasons. We have to protect the incubator. We have to protect the woman. Well, how does that affect us on a species-wide scale when it comes to, you know, ensuring that the kid's ours and the kid lives long enough so he can go off and reproduce himself, or the female, the daughter can as well, right? How do we do that? Well, we have to have a species that has some sort of value on protecting women, who will take the bullet for the woman, who will fight the saber-toothed tiger. That's why we have that mythology, right? St. George and the dragon. Fight the dragon, kill the dragon, so you can defend Milady's honor, because the dragon was going to eat the princess. And if you do so and you kill the dragon, then the princess reciprocates by fucking you and having you live happily ever after, right? That's why you have that mythology, because you're protecting the female, protect the incubator. So I wanted to point that out here, because that dynamic, that innate dynamic, that conventional masculinity and conventional femininity and all of the archetypes and all of the mythology that has for centuries and millennia has gone on around the human race, all of that gets thrown out of the window right after the sexual revolution. And I'm going to show you why that is right here, because what we're doing now is we have decided that emotions should trump reason. Emotion and women are wonderful always trumps as always the trump card. And that's exactly what happens with David Buss in his latest book, which is Men Behaving Badly. That's what it is. And he's making the rounds on podcasts, and he's, you know, promoting his work. And I know I would do the same thing. But when I read through his book, and I finished it back in November, and it was a tough read for me because it was very apologetic. It was like masculine apologetics. And so it's like throwing a bone to women and trying to find, you know, cutesy ways to get around women are wonderful. Cutesy ways to say, well, you know, men are dogs, but women are really wonderful and they're really looking for this kind of guy. And it's like, no, they're not. Especially when he talks about dark triad traits. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little while once I get to the video. Let me back up here. Anybody else? Dude, really? Good enough. Let's see. Anybody else? Sam, you can use the banhammer a little bit more liberally. I would be much appreciated. Oh, wait. The key difference between how chimps and bonobos split evolutionarily is that the sisterhood evolved into bonobos. Humans are closer to bonobos. No, we're not actually. Well, I mean, in a way we are, I guess. When people throw, you know, have you read Sex at Dawn? Yeah, I have. And I've also read The Naked Bonobo, which completely debunks that entire, at least the theoretical premises of Sex at Dawn. The idea is that we're just these, you know, free loving hippie egalitarian bonobos, and that's if we could just get it's the what is it, the naturalism fallacy, right? If we could just be more like bonobos, we'd have a better society. No, that's actually what's got us into trouble. And because bonobos are actually not free loving egalitarian hippies, they are very violent. They form coalitions, they fight each other. Yeah, do they have sex more than any other primate? Absolutely. But they're just as hypergamous, absolutely as much hypergamous as any other ape. I think people want to look at them as like sort of this, sort of like an ideal. Like, well, we need to get back to back to the jungle, man. Not as a bonobo. I don't want to. I'll tell you that. That. All right, I'm a little hesitant to throw this stuff on here, but let's get into. I have to show this to you first. Okay. This is Rob Henderson. I think I might have used this once before. Human emotions evolved because they generally work to confer evolutionary benefits to us, helping us to ultimately increase the likelihood of survival or reproducing capacities. That is the function of emotions. And if you saw me on You Are Here with Ariella, the first thing out of my mouth was emotions are not magic. I made that same case in my fourth book, Religion, because we want to place these ephemeral, esoteric qualities, like these cosmic importance on emotions. And the reason we do that is because we live in an age of feels before reals. However, when people don't want you to know this stuff, they don't want you to understand that emotions are actually a physiological, biological function of, well, certainly for humans, but also for other animals too. This is what the first one said. It says, from an evolutionary perspective, human emotions evolved as they have because they generally work to confer evolutionary benefits to us, helping us ultimately increase the likelihood of survival or reproductive capacities. I'm just going to read the highlighted parts here. If you look at things that make people happy, remember, would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? You can quickly see that they generally map onto outcomes that would have, on average, led to increased probabilities of survival or reproduction for our ancestors. Here's a short list: food, hunger, blah, blah, blah; sex, engaging in fun times with friends; success in social context; and task completion. In broad strokes, we can see that how these kinds of outcomes not only have the capacity to lead to happiness, but they also have clear benefits from an evolutionary perspective. The evolutionary take on happiness then is existentially this: happiness is an effective state that motivates us to engage in actions that are likely to lead to outcomes that would, on average, lead to increase in the likelihood of survival or reproduction. And that's that part. And I'm going to read the rest of it here. From an evolutionary perspective, ultimate outcomes pertain to outcomes that bear on increases in likelihood of survival and reproduction. Thus, we may be thrilled to have a piece of chocolate cake on the table in front of us at a birthday party, but the momentary happiness is not an end goal in itself. That's very important. We evolved to be happy when presented with rich food offerings because our ancestors who were motivated to find rich foods were more likely to eat and thus to survive and reproduce. Happiness then, like anxiety, is an effective state with the primary evolved function of motivating us to engage in behaviors that would have led to evolutionarily adaptive outcomes under ancestral conditions. Happiness is not an end goal. Keep that in mind. Put that into your notebooks, children.
Hello there, children. How's it going?
Happiness is not an end goal. It is a means to an end. Thank you very much. I just ruined Rollo ruined happiness for me. Screw that guy. Wah. Now then, let us continue. I have to preface this because when we get to the Justin Baldoni part of today's show, you'll understand why I am so aggravated. Here we go. Rolf, once again, men scored higher than women on emotional stability across countries, even more so in highly individualistic societies. Right? This, again, Science Direct. This is from 2020, in fact. I'm not going to dig too much into this. If you want the link, I'll be happy to give you the link for this entire article here. So that's the research study for that. Then we got to use this. The largest ever mega-analysis already from age 1, males show greater variability of brain structure than females, being more likely to fall in the extremes. That means extremely intelligent or extremely dumb. It also means extremely emotionally overcharged or extremely undercharged. Okay, it's the variability, the bell curve between men and women when it comes to brain structure is much greater variability in men than it is in women. Does that mean men are the ultimate badasses? No. In some cases, it means they're the ultimate dumbasses too, because they're also on the most extreme end of the bell curve. So you don't get out the team man banner and wave it around just yet. Okay. Yeah, it's great. Hey, awesome. But the sex differences in emotionality. Thank you once again, Rolf. In emotionality, with women scoring substantially higher. Did you catch that, kids? Sex difference in emotionality with women scoring substantially higher, were largely in wealthy and in gender egalitarian countries, replicating a well-known pattern. Women are more innately emotional, and when they live in cultural settings and environments that allows that to flourish, you will see that come out. You will see it more pronounced in those societies and individualistic, egalitarian, what do they call it? Weird cultures like wealthy, egalitarian, independent. I forget what the acronym is, but when feminism can be afforded by that country, you're damn right. When gynocentrism can be afforded in that country because of wealth or because of the socioeconomic, conditions there, that's when you're going to see emotion trump reason. That's where you're going to see it, because women are wonderful and women are emotional. That's it. End of story. I mean, if you wanted to distill this down to one message today, that's it. And yet we're going to apologize for masculinity. We're going to say men need to be more like women. Women are correct. When I talk about a female correct society, that's what I'm getting at. And that's the scientific side of that entire thing. Now, I've got more. I got lots more than that. But before we do that, let's move on to today's, the next video of today. And I would have put it in, but again, I have been thwarted by, where did it go? Is it Baldoni? Here we are. Okay, so this is a show. Let me put this on. I have used this guy on several occasions. This is Justin Baldoni. I've run him up the flagpole a few times, even on this show and his show. But somebody made me aware of this today, and I thought it would fit in very well. I'm going to scrub it up to the point where I have in my notes here. Okay, let's go to 18, and this is where I wanted to start. So his guest is, was it Jason Wilson? I think his name is. Now, Baldoni is essentially a woman. So let's just, and you can see sort of this almost visceral disgust by his wife in a lot of this stuff. Now, again, that sounds like I'm being real catty and all that shit, but let's look at the behavior again, right? Medium is the message. So this is just, is it Jason Wilson? Justin Wilson. I can't remember his name. Let me see. What is this? This is, no, that's not it. Hold on. Jason Wilson. Okay. Jason Wilson. You'll get the picture. If you don't know who he is, just go do a Google search for the guy. This is a guy who's sort of a masculinity instructor, but it's very like what I have a problem with right now, I think, is when it comes to guys like Justin Baldoni. Are you man enough? It's an effort in obscuring what conventional masculinity is. It's an effort in denialism of what I just talked about 2 seconds ago, right? About the differences, the emotional differences between men and women. We do not have the same capacity to process emotion that women do. It's not that men don't. It's that we don't do it like women do it. But yet we live in a gynocentric social order, in a feminine primary social order that prioritizes and rewards emoting and conditioning men to be more like women, to emote more like women, to cry on demand, right? To express yourself and get in touch with your feminine side and all this Jungian psychology that everybody is standardized on since like the mid 50s. That's where we're at right now, because that's what sells. It feels good. It tastes good. The red pill doesn't taste good. The black pill doesn't taste good. Right? Whatever you want to, however you want. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The black pill definitely doesn't taste good because it's the prescription that doesn't taste good. But as far as data-driven understanding of intersexual dynamics, that's a tough sell. But you know what's not a tough sell? This is not a tough sell.
3 times. I wouldn't have practiced a promiscuous lifestyle the way I did. I wouldn't have tried to sell drugs. I wouldn't have stole my stepfather's gun to try to impress gang members on my block, etc. I can go down the list. And so the cave basically, it came about because I wanted to give boys what I longed for. Just a man who would encourage them without condemning them in the areas of their lives where they feel weak. And then build them up to where they're strong and then send them out to live their own lives without him impressing his own, ideals on them. And so that's why it's imperative for me. Also, when I started the Caveman, it was 2006 when I got the vision. Boot camp programs was really popular, and they also had scared straight programs where they would take kids and take them through the prison and try to scare them from making these decisions that could end them up in prison. But I quickly discovered that you can't heal a child by re-traumatizing them. And then when I started looking at all these boot camp programs started failing, I said, well, wait a minute. Because at the time, guys, the Cave of Adullam was basically like a martial arts mentoring program where if the kids were getting in trouble, the principal would
push this
in the Cave of Adullam, the majority of the boys have their fathers. But that doesn't mean there's not problems there. Like when I worked with some white kids before, you picture perfect families, a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And so when I started seeing that it wasn't just a black thing eventually, because like you're saying, Jamie, I thought it was just us. Because of the trauma, we wear trauma like a badge of honor. In my community growing up, the hyper-masculine black male was the gold standard. So here it is, I'm a very creative boy. I could draw, I could paint, I liked gardening, everything. I had to put all of that away because I couldn't get a girl doing those things. You know what I mean? And so I became this image that I didn't even feel inside. Being a thug was really too small for a kid like me with a big heart. And then eventually, as I've gotten older, I realized what a thug was. And I made an acronym. A thug is a traumatized human unable to grieve. And if you look at the majority of them, my friends who are dead, they're dead and gone today, or those that I know who are in prison, they didn't have an opportunity like us to cry or to release what they were feeling. They'll go grab the gun. I even have some white kids I know.
You guys pick that up? They'll go grab the gun. That's the thing. That is the emotional part. That is the act of grieving. That's exactly the whole thing I was just talking about a minute ago with the Nicholas Cruz example. There's still I think what gets me about stuff like this, and I'm going to scrub through here in just a second. They're going to talk about crying, and so it's okay to cry, guys. Be more like a woman, emote more like a woman, process emotions more like a woman, and then you will be a more perfected man. That is always the message with these guys. That's not to say that, that the conditions in the, inner city for young black men is not a bad situation. It's not a bad situation, but the whole thing that when he's talking about, I couldn't do those things and not get a girl. Yeah, you couldn't. And it's not because you're being disingenuous. It's because your ability or what you have or what you think are as a benefit are not the things that the old order has taught you should be attractive to women. A guy with creative intelligence, a guy who's good with money, a guy who's loyal, who's dependable, all of those great things. Yeah, that's great when a woman is looking for a long-term partner. But when she's looking for short-term sex, when it's the alpha seed side of hypergamy, that's when those things are not an advantage. If they're an advantage at all now. I wish they were. I wish creative intelligence was much more appreciated than it is, but that's not going to get you laid. That's not going to get a woman interested in you, and that's not going to solve your reproductive problem. So I'm not saying you should kill your emotional creative side. God forbid. No, I'm a creative guy, as you all know already. But what I am saying is that runs headlong into reality when we are raising boys as if they're defective girls. And that's all these guys are doing, is creating programs to build better betas, to build a more feminine correct, feminine perfected form of what they think is idealized masculinity. So I'm gonna push on a little bit more.
Who direct message me, who plead with me, Mr. Wilson, don't give up on us. Because majority of us who will grab an AK-47 and shoot randomly at people is because we don't know how to process what we're feeling.
Right.
And so once I start.
We don't know how to process what we're feeling. Okay, great. How should we do that? The message they say is to process it more like a woman, to get in touch with your feelings, to get on instead of, sack the fuck up. You know what? Control your emotions rather than make them go crazy, right? Crazy to the point where you're going to grab an AK-47, whatever you said, grab a gun and go be an active shooter. That's I've been saying that since I was on with Pat Campbell. Nicholas Cruz did exactly what he was conditioned to do. Express himself emotionally. Okay, what's the emotion he's expressing? Frustration and anger. How am I going to express it? Well, there's a creative way and a pro-social way and an anti-social way. Guess which one he chose? That's the difference. And you know what? You're not going to have a female teacher teach a guy like Nicholas Cruz not to express himself with an assault rifle. You need a man to come in there who is a conventionally masculine man that says, you need to get your shit together. You need to learn how to deal with defeat and rejection, and you need to find some way to come back from that. And I'm going to kick you in the ass until you do. That's what you need. You don't need, oh, it's okay, cry some more, come over here, I'm going to keep you on my... That's not what guys need. Certainly not what young men need right now. That's certainly not what purposeless guys in the Lost Boys generation need right now. And you have to be very careful of that message, because there's guys like this that are building programs and podcasts and going on Oprah and whatever else to convey this message when they fundamentally don't understand the problem. The problem is there is no conventional masculinity, and they have no fucking clue what it is. And so it's all about emotion. It's all about getting touch, to cry a little bit more and you'll be fine.
Started seeing the big picture. My whole viewpoint and mission really is it's I thought it was just us, Jamie, but it's men. Mm-hmm. And so if I could help break this narrative that we can't, it's a cycle that we can't cry. Even Justin, we talk about masculinity. There's nothing toxic about masculinity. A man becomes toxic when he only lives his life from masculine attributes, such as strength, boldness, aggression. When you only allow yourself to operate under...
Do you guys think that that's a problem today? Do you think that the majority of guys right now, like certainly Generation Z, maybe my last half of millennial generation, is that actually a problem? Hyper-masculinization? I don't think so. We see this every single day, but the media will not, and I've said this on You Are Here, the media never celebrates masculinity unless that masculinity is being expressed in feminine terms. When a father and a son put on a tutu or a little ballerinas thing and they go dancing to the theme from Frozen, that makes major headlines. But the guy who teaches his son how to hit a grand slam home run in a little league game, that we don't want to hear about that. A guy who says, hey, you know what? Well, sometimes once in a while you'll see, I think there was that one kid who saved his sister from a pit bull attack. Like, oh yeah, that's real, man. But we only know that because we watched it on Twitter. The mainstream media, that gynocentric feminine primary media, never celebrates masculinity until that masculinity knuckles under, takes a knee to gynocentrism. Then we will celebrate that. Then it's okay to cry, blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. Is that a female way of communicating, or is that a masculine way of communicating? Right? Which one are we going to opt for? Which one are we going to teach our kids? Because right now, when we talk about how this generation of guys have become, feminized or manginas, they're soy boys, whatever, metrosexuals, what we called them back in the 90s, right? That we saw back then. That's when all this stuff started happening. Hypermasculinization is the last problem we need to be worried about. If anything, we need to be worried about hyperfeminization of men right now, young men for sure. Because I laugh my ass off when people go, well, if we would just, if this kid would just have a shoulder to cry on, if he would just express himself and he could just be more, it's because he's not understood. And it's like, no, that's what your female teachers are teaching you. You need to be able to control your emotions as a man for sure. But that's what we expect. We expect a guy to do that. And why? Because men do not process emotions, and particularly negative emotions, like women do. That is a biological fact. That is a neurological fact that men do not process emotions similarly to women. But yet we want to force fit those boys into that female mold. That's perfection. Well, they don't process emotions like women, but if we could just teach them and get to them early enough and teach them to cry and emote and be more feminine, then we wouldn't have Nicholas Cruz. Then we wouldn't have these kids. Then we wouldn't have this shooting. Then we wouldn't have these despondent lost boys. Bullshit. We need more masculinity, but we need masculinity in conventional terms, not in obscured, subjective bullshit, female correct, comfortable, tastes good, masculinity that whatever aspects it is that fit into that female correct mold. We don't need that. We need some tough fucking love. We need men who are going to be coaches. We need men who are going to be drill sergeants. But not like, we can't distinguish bullying from actual, like a guy that actually gives a shit about you, who demands excellence. We constantly talk about chasing excellence, and nobody wants the drill sergeant that holds them to that. No guy out there is going, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to chase excellence in whatever your field is. Did you ever see the movie? What is it? Whiplash. And it's about this kid who wants to be the best drummer, the best jazz drummer in the world. A fantastic movie. If you have not, you want to talk about a red pill movie? And this made a lot of people uncomfortable at the time. You want to talk about a red pill movie? Look at the dynamic between, I can't remember the kid's name, who's the drummer. He wanted to be like Buddy Rich. And Mr. Fitch is I remember his name because he's the bald guy from the Farmers Insurance commercial. I can't remember the actor's name. But he kicks him to the point of, like, it almost seems like abuse. Like he's bleeding on his hands because he's trying to get the perfect tempo and everything. And later on in the movie, he explains, he says, I want Buddy Rich. I want you to be that. And the only way you get to that is if I kick you in the ass to the point of breaking you. But we can't understand that today because that doesn't taste good in a female dynamic. Chase excellence. Yes, do so. But also understand that there's a price and a sacrifice that comes with that. And sometimes that's your hands bleeding while you're pounding on the snare drum. These guys they're not Mr. Fitch. They are far, far from it. And that guy will kick your ass until you are the best. That's the coach you need. That's the teacher you need. That's the man. That's the father you should fucking have, but you don't. And his love is expressed in good job. In fact, he even says that Mr. Fitch says the two worst words in the English language, good job. Because that sort of gives you, it's good enough, man. You're okay where you're at. No, you want excellence. You want to be the best of the best. What does it take to go from ordinary to extraordinary? You will never find out with teachers like this. Never.
That umbrella, now you shut off half of your humanity. You can't be a nurturer. You can't be compassionate. You can't be long suffering because it counters what this world has told us a man is. And as a result, we know the stats that.
And what is that? What has this world told us a man is? Because up to this point, it's man down, ask permission, no authority for you, all responsibility for you. What is it? Because it's not hypermasculinity. It's certainly not Mr. Fitch. And I don't mean John Fitch. I mean, like, it's certainly not the guy who's going to kick your ass and tell you you're the best of the best. It's not the guy that's going to step in and tell you, you know what, you need to get your emotions under control. You know what, Jack Murphy, you shouldn't have said what you said. There's no coach for Jack Murphy. There's no coach for the guys who would talk like those women in the beginning of this show. There's no coach for that. We don't want to do that because we don't want to be judgmental, and we don't want to seem like we're bullying, and we don't want to seem like we're hazing. You want to know why guys can't interact with other guys right now? Why they don't understand, they can't understand the difference between a dude who is like ribbing him and giving him shit and being insulting because he's just testing that guy as like, are you on my team? Are you on my tribe? Can I rely on you? That's men insult men. We do it all the time. Watch any episode of Rule Zero, especially between me and Aaron Clary, or anyone else for that matter, or Aaron and John from Modern Life Dating. Yeah, the dynamic is completely foreign to the guys that these guys are saying, oh, there's a problem right now. Oh, I just got to be a tough guy. Nobody is saying that. No one. And no one has for over 30 years, my friend. It has been nothing but female teachers. And I can prove that to you statistically. 78% of your teachers from preschool all the way up to postgraduate school right now, all female, all taught, all teaching in a female dynamic. And that's where this advice, that's where they think it sounds like common sense, doesn't it? It sounds like it. Yeah, men are taught to be tough. We need them to be soft and loving and kind and compassionate. And let's see, how many other adjectives can I use to describe femininity? Compassionate, loving, nurturing, cry. No, we don't. We need guys that are fucking toughen the fuck up, because if we don't, we're going to get walked all over This tribe, whatever this tribe is, whatever this nation ended up becoming, whatever Western civilization becomes, it's going to get walked over just because of guys exactly like this.
Men die by suicide 3 to 4 times likely as women. And then another stat that was alarming to me, 9 out of 10 people who live to be over 100 are women. You rarely see a man, I don't care what his ethnic.
That's biological. That's not actually a socio. Well, I mean, women actually live longer for a couple of reasons. First off, it's a biological reason. Second of all, they don't take dangerous jobs. That's the statistical fact. I've heard this used before, like, well, women live longer lives. Yeah, they do because biology, but also because they tend to be the protected class. Women are wonderful. Protect the babies, big head babies.
Background is over 100 years of age. Because sadly, many of us, we identify our worth in our work. So we can't rest. We got to grind all the time. And even there's another word. If you look up the word grinding, it literally means to wear down, to crush, to oppress, to torment.
Yep.
And when you look at the majority of people who say they grind.
You know what it also means? It also means sharpening. It also means grind. Put your nose to the grindstone. It means you're going and doing the grunt work to get from one point to the next. That's what it also means. It also means grinding can mean a lot of different things, but you notice where it comes in here? Oh, you're going to crush their little poor little boy soul.
They look worn out. They look oppressed because they look at rest as a sign of weakness. And so, I mean,
no, it's because as a man, you have a burden of performance. This is the natural world, my friend. You live in the natural world and you're coming to terms with it right now. And the problem I think I see in most of this stuff is that I'll pull this out because I got other things to get to. The problem that I have with most of this stuff is it's fostering this idea of a feminine ideal, number one. But the other thing that sort of that this, I guess, speaks to me anyways, is that they have no concept outside of how do we solve this? By more female influence, by being more feminized, by being more like a woman, we can solve these problems. Because they don't have any, because they're raised in a society that thinks that that's the correct way, the only real solution. And so we go back to these cliches, we go back to these tropes, we go back to these old stories or these old memes, really, that says, well, it's because we have Mr. Fitch, it's because we have your coaches, because we have Army drill sergeants. Have you seen the state of the United States Army right now? We have the, what is it? It's the health secretary. I can't remember what his name is, but it's supposed to be, he's a transgender. He was first transgender 4-star general. That's where we're at. That's the state, right? There's never been any more male a space than the military. And that's where we're at. Do you honestly think that we have a problem with hypermasculinity right now in this country? Bullshit. But that is the only thing that sounds right. It's like, just be yourself. Don't worry, just be yourself and the girl will come along, right? It sounds like it's a right thing to say. It sounds because, Dr. Phil and Phil Donahue and Oprah and all these other talk show hosts who we're supposed to see as our kind of like our secular priesthood, they say the same thing. Steve Harvey said exactly the same thing. Baldoni wants to get in on that grift too. Because we think it ought to be right, and it's not. It's empirically falsifiable. It's empirically disproven. But yet, at the meantime, how I can just here. Let's statistically look at it, right? How many women are in college versus how many men? How many women are going into professional careers as a result of that? How many women are complaining that they can't find an economically attractive guy when they get to the point where they're like, oh, well, I'm done riding the carousel, so I guess now I'm going to look for the guy for the long haul, and they can't find those guys. Is that a result? Now we're gonna flip the script. Men need to man up. Well, you've been telling them to man down for generations. Why? How now you want them to man up? Oh, Nicholas Cruz, he went and shot up this high school. I can't believe it. Where's his dad? Gone, being feminized like the rest of the generations that came before him. That's where he is. Because we've prioritized emotion before reason. That's why. What did you say? Emoting and crying don't stop your bullies. Yeah, they don't. Oh, well, maybe we could just talk about it and just express our feelings like those two girls in the other video. Right? Maybe that'll work. Clearly it's working for them. Maybe we shouldn't judge other guys, right? Maybe we shouldn't judge, I'm going to I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers with this next one, but I'm of the school that says you should compare yourself to other guys. You absolutely should. In fact, you can't help but compare yourself to other guys. Well, you shouldn't. You should just compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Well, okay, yeah. But by your innate burden of performance, you're going to do it anyways. And other people are going to do the same thing to you. You do yourself no favors by thinking that other people don't look at you. Like, I think when people like hear me talk about burden of performance, for the masculine burden of performance, they think I should change the word, right? You should talk about it in positivity. It's the challenge of performance. Yeah, well, it would be a challenge if women had it too, but they don't. They have no challenge of performance. Men must become, women just are. Yes, guess what? You got to grind. Sorry, that's the way it works, because we have to become more than we are. We have to go from ordinary to extraordinary. And if we don't, often enough, we don't reproduce, especially in this age. That's the number one problem with the black pill right now. I'm never going to reproduce. Fuck it, I'm out. I'm done. Off myself. I'm going to get despondent, right? Well, that's a prescription. That's the difference between the red pill and the black pill, by the way. Red pill is a praxeology. It's an analysis of it. It's the diagnosis. Black pill gets a diagnosis right. They just get the prescription wrong. Yeah, I just give up. I'm done. Fuck it, I'm out. That doesn't solve any of the problems that you continually complain about. You're not going to change women's minds. You're not going to change their genetics. You're going to change their position in the socioeconomic status of the world until the meteor hits or something, until there's something that so radically shifts our society. Then where are you going to be? Then what are you going to do? You're going to be nowhere, because you didn't you didn't live up to your burden of performance. Unless you're unless you're in monk mode, and during your monk mode, you're like Kwai Chang Caine in Kung Fu. Like, unless you're in the monastery learning, I don't know, MMA fighting, or you're building yourself up, or you're doing something with that in the meantime, yeah, you're be just as useless now as you will be then. So, don't chase women. Okay, well, don't chase women. What are you going to chase anyway? I hate the word chase. And it's not, this is nothing against like guys like Rich Cooper or these guys who are like sort of like masculine empowerment guys. That's great. I think that's fantastic. I think the problem I have is the word chase, because it means like, oh, I'm going to chase you with my dick. Oh, where's the next girl? That's what chase says to me. It's not chasing. It's like, God forbid you actually want to learn the skills so you can interact with, half of the population on planet Earth. Was that chasing? Right. Oh, you mentioned a girl. You mentioned Sydney. You mentioned Torsha and your thing. So therefore you're simping. When do we get to the point where if you can't even mention a woman's name without accusations of simping, like when did that happen? It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's what I'm talking about. That's not chasing. Just because I might have been like completely sarcastic. That might have been like a side angled FU to any one of those girls. But you're never going to get that, because anytime it comes out of your mouth, anytime you even talk about a girl, that means you're chasing her. Simping, chasing, whatever the cool kids are calling it now. It's bullshit. Timius Maximus, thank you for that $10. Timius Maximus. Maximus. I am going to watch that movie again. Let me continue. Sorry, not sorry, but like sometimes I get where is it? Damn it, I don't have. Oh, where is that? Got my sound deck here, and everything's been rearranged since I got back. Rich did not quit Rule Zero, as far as I know. He's just he's kind of like on a sabbatical right now. Let's just say, come back anytime he wants. It's not, he's just doing. Rich is doing Rich. That's all I can say. And let's see what else. Oh, Andy. Hi, Andy. Watched the 1989 Roadhouse for the first time this weekend. One of the last echoes of testosterone from Hollywood. I unironically recommend it all. You know what? I think it's funny. I was talking about this with Elijah Schaefer on Slightly Offensive. And we were talking about how certain Christmas movies were supposed to be banned. And I have talked, I expected this. I predicted this. I have an essay on the Rational Male, and it's called The Red Pill Lens. That's where I actually coined the term Red Pill Lens. And the reason why I coined it was because I was watching It's a Wonderful Life. And I was doing a breakdown of George Bailey and Mary Bailey and whatever, and looking back at the intersexual dynamics of that period. And remember, that came out, I believe, in the 50s is when the movie came out, but it tracks the history. It like historically or timeline wise, it goes from like the Depression era or just before the Depression era all the way up to, I guess, the 50s, certainly the post-war era. And just to look at the difference between the intersexual dynamics between like a heterosexual white couple, George Bailey, and eventually Mary, she comes Mary Bailey, and the kids and everything else. And, there's some, lots of faith-based kind of themes that are in it as well. So people will gravitate and say that's why, but that's not why. The reason why they want to ban a movie like that is because they don't want you to remember conventional masculinity, just like these asshats don't. You want to talk about like, oh, well, men need to be men and women need to be women. Okay, good. Then do something to defend themes like what's in It's a Wonderful Life. And I'm just using that as an easy example. There's plenty of others. But those guys, the same guys who say, well, we're concerned for men, like these guys, like Baldoni and that Man Enough, they think they're MRAs. They think they're addressing men's issues. They are, and they are. He just said, men kill themselves between, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, 3.5 to 5 times more than women. I'm surprised he even got that out of his mouth on this show, but it's true. But you know why they'll say that that's the case? Is because men don't cry enough, and men they don't have any friends, and there are deaths of despair. Yeah, they are. But you know what? You can see that's the symptom. What's the disease? What's causing that? It's not because they don't have friends. It's not because they're not perfect women. It's because they don't have any friends to go to Starbucks with and talk about their feelings. That would be their solution. I've heard it before. That's not the solution. But we still want to put everything in a conventionally, or excuse me, subjective, socially constructed form of subjective masculinity. Well, you get to decide whatever you want it to be. Well, if that's the case, then you're going to get Nicholas Cruz. If that's the case, then you're going to get deaths of despair. I don't know what masculinity is. I can't tell the difference between it and bullying. Well, that's how you get that. Let's see. No, you don't get to subscribe to Incel. Whatever, Maddox, whatever the fuck it is. Who knows? Why are you even on here, dude? Men throughout history is ascribed by what women want. If a man is not accepted, therefore he is defective. Well, not throughout history, because throughout history, we've lived in a patriarchal, more or less patriarchal social orders until maybe the last 60 or so years. Having a nice cry will do you a lot more good when the Mongol horde is on the horizon. Yeah, how do you think Genghis Khan felt about crying, man? You know what? You can say a lot of stuff about Genghis Khan, but one thing you cannot say is he was not on his grind. He was definitely on his grind. And the chicks, one way or the other, they were breeding with him. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they wanted to. Where is it? Okay, I'm trying to catch up. 10 years. See, I don't have a Chris Pogson. I don't have anybody to sort of like run these. I actually probably should. I need to actually make Sam or somebody else sort of a mod here so they can put this stuff up. 10 years as a high school teacher, the effects of lacking masculinity is destroying young men and ambition. I'm canceled if I speak on this. Thoughts? I think I've already given you quite a few thoughts about that, Wild Ducati. Yeah, because you live in a feminine primary social order. And the problem is that if you say those things, if you even like voice that, oh, men and women are different, you'll lose your job. That cancel culture comes from wanting to defend social construction as the primary way of sort of organizing society, as opposed to, which is really feminine primary way, as opposed to looking at things in objective, realistic, empirical terms. Because that doesn't, like I said, doesn't taste good, but it also comes off as sounding like you're judgmental. Men are better at physical sports than women are. End of story. Poof. Done. I can show you in no uncertain terms. In fact, I don't want to step in. I don't want to get a copyright strike because that's going around. Poor Man's Podcast. That guy's got a pretty decent podcast. I think he's up to about 220 some odd thousand subs right now. And I realize subs are a vanity metric, but still, most of his videos are kind of like quick hit videos on something, TikTok videos. but he has one. And like I said, most of his videos like end up getting views in somewhere in like the 40 to 80,000 range, depending on what the video is, sometimes less than that. But he's got one that is a compilation of sports clips, like over the years, whatever, of men just dominating women in sports. And it's probably about a 10 or 11 minute clip. If you haven't seen it, go. I'm gonna give you props, dude. That was a good compilation. It's a compilation of like was it track running? There's this one video of this, and I feel bad, I really do, but there's this one video of this guy who's like, taking cell phone video of his daughter and says, oh, my daughter's first high school football game. They allowed her to be on the high school football team because they want gender equality, right? They put her on there and they see her on the field and she grabs, gets the ball and everything, and the linebacker just plows right into. I mean, it looked like death. I am not kidding. It really looked like, and that was like, what do they call that? Like, not clotheslining, but just like, clipping. I don't know what the hell they call it, but it was a vicious hit. And these are high school kids. And I'm like, that right there should teach you a lesson, right? We talk about transgender sports. We talk about, what was the other one? So that was in there, but there's also track and field events. And you got women running with men, and they wanted to have this intergender, baton passing kind of thing. And whenever a woman was in the lead, the guy would literally come from the backfield and just like lap the girl, because that's the difference. That's the difference in physicality. And if we're not willing to accept those things, then how do you have a conversation with that? How do you have, like I was saying before, emotional conversation versus a rational, reasonable conversation? How do you have that conversation with somebody who's just simply not grounded, not fundamentally grounded in reality, even when it smacks them in the face, even when you see it on a by the way, that video, 5.4 million views on that video. That's what, if you started a new red pill channel, do that. Go that way, young man. Give us that content. That's what we want, to the tune of 5.4 million people, right? Baldoni must be consulting for the military. Last year, the U.S. Army got rid of the shark attack drill. Instructors testing recruits by yelling as soon as they got off the bus so they can learn to perform under duress. Yeah. Well, they don't really need those. They'll never be under duress. I hate to say it too, because my dad was a Navy man. I know a lot of guys in the military right now. I have relatives in the military. And so I hate to like sort of disqualify or like bring down any of the, because if you serve in the military, thank you for doing your job, and thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for your commitment, men, to the military. But when you see stories like that, it's kind of like it's just, you just lose heart, right? I mean, it's just like, oh, is that where we're at? And maybe you're just seeing bad stories. Maybe it's really not like that, but then you'll see, yeah, it is actually like that. And I hate to think that the U.S. military has become a social program instead of a military fighting force that actually might have to prosecute a war at some point. So let's keep going. What do you got here? The name of the movie was Whiplash. Yes. It's called Whiplash. Did I not say Whiplash? I thought I did say Whiplash. Yeah, it was a good movie, man. It's a good movie because I'm a musician too. And and the reason it kind of spoke to me on two different levels. One was, as a musician, I've always wanted to be, and I will continue to be, a professional musician, however that works, right? The band that I'm playing in right now, Trial of Ascension, I'll give you, you want story time with Rollo? I'll give you story time with Rollo. Here we go. When I joined Trial of Ascension, I actually wasn't going to join. I went and I auditioned, and I was there, and our drummer Steve was there, and our singer Livy was there, and the bass player Jimmy was there. And I went in, I played, I plugged in, and I got skills, but I'm not playing that style of, that's like gent, right? I wasn't playing like, I'm just playing what I think is cool, right? So I'm just got there playing. And then I was like, I left the audition. I go, well, they got a great rehearsal studio, but they'll never get me. I was old. I mean, I'm just as old, well, a little bit older actually than Steve. So a week later, Steve calls me back and he says, dude, you got to come down for another audition or come down and play again. I'm like, okay. And so he saw something in me, some kind of something he could work with. And then I finally met CJ, who's the other guitarist in the band. And I had to make a decision right then and there. I was going to commit to this whole hog, or I wasn't going to do it at all. I was just going to walk away. Because I am a busy guy, as you know. I have to, do what I do. And I thought, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to have a commitment to excellence, and I'm going to do this. And it took a while. It took a while for me to learn their songs. It took a while for me to learn polyrhythms. I had to actually become a drummer myself. I one of the first things Steve insisted on was that I get a metronome and I play to a metronome. I'd never done that in my life. I played by I'm a feeler, man. I was played by feel, but I had to learn the timing and the syncopations and, like I said, the polyrhythms and everything else that got in the what we call the chug patterns, right? Like the pedal notes were way different than anything I've ever played before. I had to fundamentally become another kind of musician as a result of this. Now, of course, does it rock? Yeah, it does. And am I putting my own spin on things? Yeah, absolutely. I can at least be creative in it, but I couldn't get to the point of being creative until I was good enough to play with these guys. And that's why when I watched, Whiplash and Mr. Fish, like Steve is my Mr. Fish. Like he's like, nope, not my tempo. All right. At that point in the movie was great, man. Nope, not my tempo. Are you going too fast? Are you going too slow? Right. That kind of like, I don't know. What's the right answer? Don't hurt me. Right. But that's the process of being excellent. And if you go and you listen to, and you can find the link in the description, if you're ever going to go hear my band, it's called Trial of Ascension. We're on Spotify. We have 2 EPs, 4-song EP. So we got 8 songs on there right now. We're working on a third 4-song EP right now as well. And it's unlike anything I've ever done before. And I'm proud of it. I'm very proud of the stuff that we've done. And I think it's great stuff. And, as far as me becoming a better player as a result of that, yes, but you have to have that commitment to excellence. And that requires grind. That requires commitment. That requires chasing excellence. If that was the benchmark, if that's the goal for excellence, then that's what I'm going to pursue. And not because I want to seem like more of a man so girls will like me. No, it's about a commitment to excellence. And you know what? I don't make that. I've made $0 on Triad. In fact, I've spent quite a bit of money. Anybody who follows me on Instagram, you can see what my guitar color, like that guitar right there. That's about a $4,500 OD Cytherea. That's an expensive piece of kit right there, guys. But again, that's an instrument I bought, a custom-made luthier instrument from Israel, as a result of being in this band. And so there's a lot of other side benefits to it as well. But I've most definitely spent more money than I've ever made on this stuff. But I do it because out of love and out of a commitment to excellence. How many people are committed to excellence? I can't really think of that many. Black Sheep, thank you for all your efforts, Rollo. When is your next Patreon meet? My next Patreon meet will be in January, middle of the month, probably like 14th or 15th of January. You have to be a Patreon subscriber. And I have a $200 tier level. That's the top that I have. And that's so you can be part of that conference call. It's a Zoom call. And there's an open spot. Yeah. We've got 13 guys. It tops out at 25. And we got 13 right now. So you're welcome to come along, Black Sheep. And thank you for apparently you can afford it. So thank you for the very generous super chat, my friend. See, I will even answer the $4.99 super chats. Finished book 4 left me wondering how to evolve my language and game in today's women are wonderful dynamic. What's the compromise? There is no compromise. That's just it. Again, dude, CIA uses feminism to invade Muslim countries. Really? Because I thought it was the elves. Yeah, I know that. Thank you, Elijah Schaefer's crew. Now I know what elves mean. I had no idea what the hell that was all about. All right, let's move on. We have to do this because I will be remiss if I do not do. Which one do I start with? This one. Okay, we're starting with this one. This is David Buss. David Buss has been making the rounds lately. Now, what is all this, Bill? Why is Rollo talking about all of this? Because we need to talk about definitions here.
Well, so dark triad guys are often very charming. High dark triad guys put themselves in the center of attention. They're often very charismatic. They have verve. They tell stories in front of the group. And so those are all cues to status. Women are attracted to status.
All right. This is actually the buildup. Where's the time cue? Sorry, guys. I have it on I would have had this all queued up, but apparently I can't have that many videos already queued up without it like slowing down the process here. That is 1240. Okay, let me see. Is it this is pretty funny, actually. Okay, this guy. This is off of
that do this more or are more prone to this.
Yeah, so it's basically what's called the dark triad of personality. So this is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy combined with the short-term mating strategy. So hallmark.
Let me give you the build up here. Dr. David Buss is a preeminent evolutionary psychologist. Written lots of books. He's actually a Godsod who I would be starstruck if he ever came on the show. God, please. Was a student actually of David Buss. Now, before you go, okay, boomer, whatever, listen to what this guy has to talk about, because I don't want to say he's the godfather of Evo Psych, but he, like a lot of people, studied under this dude. He has, and in the past, I've been a big fan of his. I think that in the most recent, like say 4 or 5 years, he has really taken a hatred. He has really taken a dislike to the manosphere. And has really taken to, I guess, apologizing for masculinity, which you'll see here in a moment. One of the things, why am I bringing this up, is because of it's about dark triad traits. If you saw my video with John from MLD, I did a show called "Why Is Evil Sexy?" and we talked about a lot of the same things that this guy, he talks about here. The problem is in his most recent book, he almost completely glosses over, just bypasses, breezes by women's sexual selectivity in all of this. There's, again, women are wonderful. We can't say anything unflattering about female nature, but we still have to talk about this empirical data and this evidence and everything else. And how are we going to interpret that? Well, we're going to interpret it through a feminine primary, glasses, instead of looking at understanding that intersexual dynamics requires men and women. It requires men's nature and women's nature.
Of narcissism is high scorers tend to be grandiose. They think they're God's gift to women if they're men. They think they're more attractive, more intelligent, more higher in mate value than they really are. And importantly, high scoring narcissists have a sense of entitlement. They feel like they deserve, because they're so great, a larger share of the pie. And that extends to the sexual realm. They have a greater sense of sexual entitlement. Machiavellianism, people who pursue a manipulative and exploitative social strategy. So these are the liars, the cheaters, the deceivers.
So the guys that women really want to bang, more or less. I'm going to prove that to you guys here in just a second. Do I need to? I can prove it to you, but I just wanted to, so I'm starting with the dark triad thing here, because a lot of the stuff that I talk, that when I'm watching this stuff, and I've read David Buss's previous books as well, and I agree with quite a bit of it, but a lot of this is backpedaling. And I have used, and I'll give you a quick example here. I think it's a parallel to this, is I have talked about the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Fantastic book. I think that's at the top of my reading list, by the way. Besides my books, 48 Laws of Power is definitely the top. 33 Strategies of War, fantastic book. Mastery, fantastic. If you are a purposeless guy, read Mastery. And then he's got Art of Seduction. He's got some other stuff, and he's got the Laws of Human Nature. And the tone changes in Laws of Human Nature. It's much more reserved. It's much more pulled back. It's much more apologetic, I think. It's much more feminine, correct. And that came, here you go from a guy who had one of the best, Robert Greene, one of the best, most empirical, objective understandings of the fundaments of power. And that book was published in 1998. I think it was 2019. And then we get the Laws of Human Nature, and still a good book, but it's almost not the same author at this stage. And he's got another book out, which is sort of clips and quotes and stuff from all of his books, which I think is kind of you're on the you're kind of phoning it in at that point when you're doing stuff like that. But But not take anything away from it, but you will notice that I think that you could see the same thing in, like, say, Dr. Steven Pinker. When you look at The Blank Slate and what he talks about there, and like his most recent books, then it softens the message. It's women are wonderful, and we can't change the narrative, and we can't go against it because we don't want to lose our tenure. When I read David Buss's most recent book, which is Men Behaving Badly or whatever, I see the same thing. Same thing also, I should say, applies to Warren Farrell, applies to a lot of the guys, certainly Jordan Peterson. It's tempered, it's nerfed, I guess would be a better term. And this is what nerfing is. So when you hear him talk about men with dark triad traits, as in the book, by the way, too, it's always, well, these guys are full of themselves and they overestimate women's sexual interest. Well, really, all men overestimate women's sexual interest. That's an evolutionary dynamic that is unique to men. It is better to err on the side of women being interested in you sexually than to err on the side of, oh, I'm just going to go play with myself at home. That's because you're more likely to get laid that way. For women, for anger, like women default to, it's like the male anger bias. Better to err on the side that daddy's angry than daddy's not angry, or that guy is angry. And so there's an anger bias that women say, you're just an angry, bitter man, right? Well, the root of that comes from your evolutionary firmware. But when we talk about dark triad traits, this is where the definitions and this is where the understandings is. This is where sort of like the thematic thing comes in, like I was saying before with the Baldoni thing. How do we interpret what is masculine? Because if you go according to the American Psychological Association, traditional masculinity is a personality disorder. To the largest group, the largest branch of psychologists, the largest organization of psychologists in America, the APA. Men, bad. Traditional masculinity, bad. Disorder. You're insane. You're insane if you're traditionally masculine. That's essentially what they're saying. It's something that you will need therapy for. You need to have some sort of like corrective therapy so you can think right, because you think in the way that a traditional masculine man would. It's like saying BPD, right? Like borderline personality disorder, traditional masculinity personality disorder. Essentially, that's what they're estimating. And so that transfers over into other fields of psychology, such as, in this case, now, unfortunately, evolutionary psychology. And so we cast our analysis, we cast our reading of that data in a light that is women are wonderful. We cast this stuff. So narcissism is narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. Well, what does that entail? And I'm going to show you some other data sets here in just a second, but I want him to say his piece first so that you can get the idea, because for the most part, women want those traits. They want dark triad. They want the guy who's brooding. They want the guy who's full of himself. They want that arrogant cockiness. That's why PUAs were so successful. They could emulate cocky and funny that dark triad guys had that they didn't. Well, what's this guy doing to get that attention and to get women to like him that I'm not doing? Well, you're a nice guy and you're a schlub and you're trying to play nice all the time with this girl, whereas this guy's being an asshat and is dark triad. Okay, well, what are those behaviors? If I mimic those behaviors and I ape those behaviors, then will it work for me? Yeah, it will. That's why PUA was so successful back in the early days, because it aped the behaviors of dark triad alpha males. It's so successfully that we can write, VH1 had, the pickup artist. We had so well that we're still talking about it in 2021.
And they view other people as pawns to be moved around the chess set to satisfy their own selfish goals. And then psychopathy, one of the hallmarks is lack of empathy. So most people feel
okay. Now notice he is terming psychopathy in lack of empathy. Rather, there's a difference, by the way, between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is feeling bad for somebody else. It's like, wanting to sympathize with that person, bring your sick mother a cup of soup, right? Empathy is having the same experience as that person. Like if you were attacked by a bear in the woods or something like that, and you barely survived, another guy who had the same experience, he can empathize with exactly what you're going through because he had a similar experience. Sympathy is you can still feel bad for somebody, but you didn't have the same experience for that person. So there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. And I think that we try to conflate the two because again, sympathy and empathy, we think of women as being preternaturally, magically empathetic. Like they have these superior empathy for everyone. No, they are sympathetic. They can't possibly be empathetic with or have some sort of magical ability to empathize with people because they don't have the similar experience. We need to split those hairs. I'm sorry, it might sound like semantics, but we have to simplify. We have to also pick out apart why that is. Women are more nurturing, right? Women are the vulnerable sex. Women have to form social networks and communicate more with women. They have to form tribes. They have to be more communitarian and group interdependent. And that starts at the very early age with little girls, right? I mean, the worst thing in the world for a little girl is to have some friend say, I don't want to be your friend anymore. You're out of the group. To be ostracized from a peer clutch is like the worst sentence for women, women in general, but like little girls, to be kicked out of the group. And the reason for that is because we think of women as being more emotionally like in touch with their emotions, because we think that men and women are blank slate equals. So men are just as emotional as women, and we all process it the same, and we're just blank slates, and there's nothing different between Sally and Johnny. And so that's how you get things like empathy, like conflating empathy with sympathy, because Johnny can't empathize with Sally because he's a boy. He doesn't have the similar experience. He can sympathize with her. I feel bad for you. You fell down and skinned your knee. Here, come on, let me help you. I'll put a Band-Aid on it, right? That's sympathy, right? Maybe Johnny actually fell down, skinned his knee too, and he can empathize with that, but he can't empathize from the position of being a girl. But we tend to think of women as being like magic, supernaturally empathetic, and they're not. They're nurturing, certainly. They communicate differently, maybe on different levels than men do. But are they more empathetic? No, because they don't have the same experience.
Passion when someone is hurt or a dog gets hit or injured. Psychopaths don't. They might laugh when someone gets injured.
Okay, that's sympathy, not empathy. You're not the dog. You can't feel what the dog feels. You can be sympathetic for it. Like, that's fucked up. I would be very sympathetic if Ned got hurt, right? But I can't be a dog and empathize with the dog being hurt because I'm not a dog.
Or a pet gets injured. So it's like most humans, 95% of us have a normal empathy circuit, a sense of compassion, and it's like it's severed with these high scores on psychopathy. So if you combine these three elements of the dark triad, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, you combine that with a short-term mating strategy, this is the subset of guys who are most likely to sexually harass, to deceive, to seduce and abandon, and also to sexually assault.
And yet they are in the minority of those cases. That's the problem. And so hear me out on this, okay? When you have guys who are like, what was the joke was, remember back in the Me Too era, I guess we're still in it right now, right? But remember back in 2017, who was getting Me Too'd? Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, well, Harvey Weinstein, yeah, probably dark triad, but Harvey Weinstein's a fat piece of shit. Harvey Weinstein couldn't get laid by any other means. Harvey Weinstein, I mean, maybe he could have got himself into shape and went at it, but like, he's Harvey Weinstein. He didn't care. Yeah. Does he have dark triad traits? Most definitely. But if that's going to be your example, then you also have to take into consideration guys like James DeFranco, right, who got Me Too'd. Think of all the high profile athletes and actors during that time who got Me Too'd. Think of all the guys, or it doesn't even have to be those guys. It could be like leaders of industry, right? Who was getting Me Too'd? Who was getting fired from their jobs as a result of just simply suspicion of sexual harassment, suspicion of allegations? Like who lost their job? Who had their lives ruined during the Me Too moral panic? And well, I guess what the world will never know. But I would argue most of them weren't these self-centered. They weren't Andrew Tate, right? He just basically described Andrew Tate, and I think in a positive light, honestly. We can look at Machiavellianism in a positive light. It's certainly a realistic way of living. It is. It's certain, and clearly women select for that. I can show you the proof for that here. I will show you the proof for that here in just a moment. I would argue this is that the guys who are getting sexual harassment and sexual assault charges are guys who made the attempt to get intimate with a woman, and that woman simply didn't want to have anything to do with them. She wanted to call HR because he wasn't hot enough. That's why. And so those guys, I would argue that most guys, especially in this era, in the internet age, and certainly since the 21st century, the guys more likely to be, to be accused of sexual assault, accused of harassment, are the guys who don't know how to interact with women. It's the guys like, the narcissists, the dark triad guys, Gene Simmons, right? It's like the rock stars who certainly have a short-term mating strategy and are probably, very dark triad and very self-centered. I mean, hell, you can look at 50 Shades of Grey, right? Is that guy, how dark triad do you have to be into BDSM? Vince from Masculine Geek, tell me, what's the prerequisites? And I think that when we look at dark triad traits, we're looking at them through the lens of female correctness. Oh, they don't have compassion and love and empathy. Well, those are traits that I would say are at least, characteristic of femininity. So you're saying you don't have feminine traits, and this is a leap, maybe I'm extrapolating, maybe this is a slippery slope, but it seems to me that when you define empathy as such, when you define narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and psychopathy pretty much has a pretty defined, condition, but when you define it in those terms, but yet women still have hybristophilia, they still want to get with the bloody murderer in prison. You say, well, they're damaged too. Well, yeah, but only women get that. So there has to be something about the female mind that wants to get with the guys who are dark triad, cocky, arrogant, full of themselves, presume that they're good looking, think they're God's gift to women, right? Yeah. When you're a beta male and you see that, it's in your best interests to downplay that, to shit on those guys because they're the ones getting their dick sucked. That's why. That's beta males building a coalition against alpha males. What are the characteristics that define alpha males? Now, there's a lot of definitions. I've had those episodes before. I've told you the difference between, say, like a Tony Stark versus a Captain America, or a Batman versus a Superman. Those are both alpha archetypes. But which one has the dark triad traits? Batman or Superman? Which one has dark triad traits? Iron Man or Captain America? The cocky, funny Iron Man who up until he meets up until Pepper Potts is part of his life, right? And we love that too. We want to think that Pepper Potts is so special she can tame the dark triad asshole that is Tony Stark, right? It's Beauty and the Beast. And yes, and Mackenzie, if you're watching, here we go. All right. The Beauty and the Beast dynamic is that women fall in love with the beast. They don't fall in love with the prince. Well, it seems to me like the beast is pretty dark triad because he was suffering from a curse for being an asshat to the village, right? He had, he can't love and he's brooding. He's basically an incel black pill MGTOW living in a castle by himself. And love, I hate love, and it takes Belle to sort of convert him into the prince, which is a guy she never would bang in the first place. So arguably Gaston should have been the guy that she got with. Very pro-social, chicks dig him, maybe he's a little full of himself, but much better choice than the beast. I mean, we can argue about that if you want to as well. That's the paradox of Beauty and the Beast.
That's one of the things that I hope people, my book is not a book of male bashing. So it's not all men. Most men, I think, find things like sexual harassment or sexual coercion to be morally abhorrent and would never engage in any actions like that. But this subset,
I shouldn't say that. It's not male bashing. It is alpha male bashing. It's the guys who are going to do better than you in the sexual marketplace as a result of this analysis. Those guys bashing. That's what it's really about. It's about beta males forming coalitions to tear down alpha males and try to reset the game. I said this yesterday on Rule Zero. Women do not want to women would rather change the game to fit their skills than to actually get better at playing the game. Like don't wish it were easier, wish you were better, right? That is a foreign concept to women. Women, the most natural concept in the world is, well, change the rules so they fit me. Lower the baskets in the WNBA so we can dunk. What you do is you fundamentally change the game, and you're hoping that it's going to be that way. In some games you can't change, like the sexual marketplace, which we see every day in the manosphere.
Men, high dark triad men pursuing a short-term mating strategy, they're the ones who are serial harassers and serial coercers.
We see a lot of this in the media right now. What do you think, this is a little bit off topic. You didn't talk about this in the book, but I'm wondering, do you think that there is a stronger presence of dark triad traits in people that make it to the top of politics in the media? Or are we just hearing about those particular instances because those people are at the top of politics in the media?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, that people who are high on dark triad do seek out positions of status and leadership and so forth. And so they might be, in fact, overrepresented.
Do they seek it out, or do they end up in those positions as a result of their personality? Because if we're going to look at it one way, we have to look at the other way, right? Do you have all the things you have because you're alpha, or are you alpha because you have all the things you have? One's authentic, one's not. Do they end up in those positions as a result of that mindset, or do they end up in or do they just strive for those positions and create those positions because they're dark triad?
Among politicians and other forms of leaders. But I think it is interesting that, those who have hit the media are kind of classic examples of this dark triad, like Harvey Weinstein, or Jeffrey Epstein, classic examples of, manipulative, narcissistic, and have zero empathy for the harm that they're inflicting on their sexual victims.
Okay. They can't have empathy. They can have sympathy. They cannot have empathy. Continue.
It's, I think, interesting to note also that this kind of makes my point of the serial harassers and serial sexual assaulters. So you have a small percentage of men committing the large majority of these acts of sexual violence, which fundamentally bypass female choice. And that's one of the things that unites all these different forms of sexual conflict that I talk about in the book, is female choice is like the number one law of mating, that as women have evolved.
That right there, my friends, is female correctness 101. Because historically, that choice has been limited by the patriarchy. It has been limited by a social order that prioritized men as responsible and authorities from within society. And it was that way prior to the sexual revolution because of, again, we gave the world hormonal birth control, and we gave women 100% exactly female choice, right? 100% unilateral control over the reproductive state of humanity. And we're 60 years since then. And now the most natural thing in the world is to think that like female choice is the benchmark. It's the keystone of everything. A woman chooses you, and that's how it works, right? And that's why when we talk about like issues of, let's say, forced copulation, because I don't want to use that word, when we talk about how men in a patriarchal society not only had responsibility to the women that they got with, but they also had responsibility to the families that they produced to provide, protect, and be parentally invested in at least in monogamous societies, or even in polygamous societies, depending on the religion. But they had the authority to exercise that. The problem is right now is that women have 100% authority over the choice and 0% responsibility at this stage. And I mean that in terms of we will legislate it to the point where women will be absolved of personal decisions, will be absolved of pregnancies, will be absolved of, don't judge me. Don't look back at I've had my fun in my past. The past is gone. My sexual past doesn't make any difference, but it still does because you're a human male, and it does have, evolutionarily speaking, it better have a significance to you. But it doesn't matter if all we're going to do is say female choice is the number one thing. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't be able to choose who they want to get with. The problem he's getting into, or I see the imbalance in the dynamic that he's talking about, is prior to the sexual revolution, it was a compromise between men's mating strategy and women's mating strategy. Women's mating strategy today is, if people want to say this, they want to say, oh, women are the gatekeepers to sex and men are the gatekeepers to commitment. No, they're not. They're not. I answered this I answered Sydney about this on You Are Here. I wish that were the case. They're not. Women are, they benchmark. They're the gatekeepers of commitment and the gatekeepers of sexuality today. You say, well, I'm not going to be committed to some girl if she doesn't want to, suck my cock or what. Like we can, from a male perspective, a male logic, we can see it in those terms, but we can clearly see that if it is, in fact, the keystone is women's choice as to who they're going to get with, well, then how does that reflect when it comes to marriage rates, age of first marriage, age of first childbirth, the high incidence, 42% of women being having children out of wedlock? Baldoni don't want to touch that, right? They don't want to touch that unflattering facts about any of that stuff. But what happens here is if we say, okay, well, women's choice should be that's the highest, the loftiest goal. That's the keystone from which, that's the prime directive, right? That's the keystone from which anything else, proceeds from. Okay, if that's the case, but if that is in fact the case, then women are also the gatekeepers of commitment. So you throw that idea out of your head right now. Women are as long as they're the unilateral controllers of hypergamy. And in doing so, by the way, I should have brought this up as well, is in proposing that female choice is the prime directive of, a gynocentric social order for sure. In doing so, what you're basically saying is that hypergamy and women's mating strategy is the preeminent strategy that should define society. That's what you're saying. Because that wasn't the way it was before. And I don't think a lot of people really realize that. Because prior to the sexual revolution, it was a compromise between men's mating strategy and women's mating strategy. So men would say, okay, I'm going to provide for you. I really want to have sex with you. And that was the only access I could get to you was through marriage. I mean, societally speaking, obviously you could still have premarital sex back then. But from a social dynamics perspective, prior to, say 1960 anyways, that was the case. If you were a single mother, that was shameful. If you were certainly a teenage single mother, if you had a baby out of wedlock, you had to take that baby and go have it somewhere else, and at least adopt it out, or the grandparents take care of it. You would have to. It was what my mother-in-law says. You have to put her away, and that was shameful because she had to be on her own. She's a liability, and I think on some level of consciousness, those women still, even in that time, understood that being a single mother was a detriment to your ability to get a good quality guy. No guy back then wanted to get with single mothers because that was a bad bet for his paternity, but also she's got a resource drag, which is the kid. And I know it sounds like really I'm being unempathetic by saying that. Maybe I'm dark triad for saying that, but it's true. That's the nuts and bolts of this. And so back then we balanced that by saying, okay, these are my mating strategies, and there's some of it that is really good for you, and there's some of that's not, because I really want to bang other chicks. And so my opportunity cost, I will compromise that by saying I will forsake all others in sickness and health. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of the kids. I'll take on that responsibility. I'll get a good job. I'll make sure we have a house. I'll make sure that the babies are fed. I'll make sure the lights stay on. I'll make sure you're happy. I'll give you a dishwasher and some washing machines too. I'll do my best to keep you where you're at. Here's the exchange. The compromise is this: I get sex, and any of the sex that we have and produce a child, that's better be my goddamn child. That's the deal. Deal? Okay. Well, for women, it's like, okay, I need a man to provide for me. I need all of that. I want that. I'm in love with you because I feel like I have some sort of empathy, have some form of emotional investment in you as well. I really want to have sex with you, but the best way to do that, at least in 1955, is to get married. And consequently, we say the marriage rate is higher, the rate of first marriage is higher. And granted, there's a socioeconomic factor to that as well. But that was the compromise. That compromise is gone, has been gone really since the early 80s, I think. But we don't want to talk about that. We want to say, well, it's all these dark triad guys that just want to get their dicks wet. Well, of course they do. There's no consequence to them not. They're already desired, universally desired. That's the choice that women make. The choice is this: I want to fuck the dark triad guy. I want Christian Grey. That's who it is. That's what they want. But we're going to ignore that because we're still living in an old order. And maybe it's because he's a boomer, right? But in an old order ideal that we think that men ought to live up to, while simultaneously we're going to say, well, it's all about women's choice because we can't think in any other way than hormonal birth control, then the sexual revolution, then the free love generation, then women, then followed after that is gynocentrism. We can't think, it literally cannot have a concept outside of that framework.
Involved the desire to choose when, where, with whom, and under what circumstances they have sex. And these male efforts like sexual harassment, sexual assault, stalking, intimate partner violence basically function to bypass female choice, or that's what they're aimed at.
Yes, that's exactly what they're aimed at. That's why you want to know why women hate game and they hate the red pill, because it figures that out. It does an end run around what he's really describing is hypergamous filter, right? Are you real or are you not real? Are you really an alpha dude or are you not? What's a shit test? Are you real or are you not real? It's basically trying to verify cues that a man is giving. So yeah, from that perspective, sure. But what we're not looking at is that women also, like when I say abortion is the ultimate expression of hypergamy, you'd probably spit all kinds of hate at me for saying something like that. But it's true from a mechanical perspective. That is the purpose of abortion. It is a fail-safe against bad, what? Reproductive choices. Because we've made women's choice the preeminent, prime directive, keystone, the rule from which all other rules follow. Because we don't have that compromise anymore, prior to the sexual revolution. That's why. So while we're here, let me go and throw these out there so we can sort of define what dark triad is. Okay. Our good friend Rob Henderson put this up, and actually, let me take this out for 1 second. Women rated male characters designed to capture high dark triad facets of personality, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, or a control personality. Physicality was constant. Women rated the high dark triad character as significantly more attractive. That's number one. Oh, let's move on a little bit more. College men who admitted to behavior that, okay, so this, by the way, this is Rob quoting David Buss from his book. College men who admitted to behavior that legally meets the definition of grape tend to be more popular, have higher status, and more consensual sex partners. Men with money, status, popularity, and power are more likely to be sexual predators. Now then, personality and individual differences, dark triad personality. This is attractiveness to women. This is actually the study that I don't know why I put that in there. That's the study he's quoting. Here it is again. Convicted criminal offenders had more children than individuals never convicted of a criminal offense. Importantly, the reproductive success of criminals, sound like dark triad guys, was explained by a fertility increase from having children with several different partners because they were so what? Reproductively successful. We can only presume that they were chosen, right? Because women have the access to, if they didn't want to have the kid of the, let's see, convicted felon, and people say, well, what if they got raped? Okay, but rape accounts for a fraction of 1% of all abortions. So women having those kids out of wedlock with dark triad guys who are incarcerated or bloody murderers are doing so electively. What does that say about women's involvement of their choice, the prime directive from which all of the holy choice comes from, right? What does that say about the intersexual dynamics between men and women? We're only looking at one side. We're only going to define Machiavellianism in the negative. I would argue that Machiavellianism, certainly that aspect of the dark triad, is beneficial. Absolutely. That's why women select for that. They want the guy who's full of himself. They want the guy with ambition. They want the guy now, do they want him to be an asshat? No, they want the best of both worlds. But who are they going to fuck? That guy. Who are they going to marry? It's probably going to be, the nice guy who has a good job and stable and is empathetic and has more feminine qualities and wants to be, protection, provisioning, and parental investment. It's hard to find those guys in a globalized sexual marketplace. If you're ignoring that, David, you're ignoring the bigger picture. And then let's move on. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. This just came up in my feed today. All right. This is from an account called ACS Confessions. Okay. What this is I believe it's the UK, and it's college students, and they do this so anonymously. You have to put in your college where you're at, but it makes it, it anonymizes this. Okay. So here's another. This is a really good one. ACS Confessions. A girl I was dating a year ago called me a pussy because I told her I would hate to go to prison. I asked her why, and she said it's because going to prison makes a guy more attractive. Sound like Dark Triad? Does it sound like women with hybristophilia? It sounds to me like all women have hybristophilia, but let's just throw them a bone here. Women who are damaged and have hybristophilia, and it's only women that have hybristophilia. Why is it so common that even when the women who maybe don't have hybristophilia still find a guy who has a capacity for violence, a capacity to go to be be such an outlaw that he might go to jail, that some chick's gonna call him a pussy because he would be afraid to go to jail? I understand that. I don't want anybody to go to jail. I don't personally want to go to jail, not again anyways. But I don't think that it's to say that it's not a positive, or to say that it's like women don't choose those guys. There's so many examples of this. And again, it's like the black pill, red pill thing. We can look at those examples over and over and over again, but you have to look at them with a red pill lens. Hybristophilia is a feature, not a bug of women's nature. I know that sounds horrible because we want to say, oh, well, we mean, men with compassion and emotionality. And like I was saying before, we're trying to build better betas on Justin Baldoni's, show. Oh, we want them to cry and get in touch with their emotions. Yeah, you know what? Those guys aren't getting laid. Those guys aren't going to reproduce. Those guys make good, like milk toast, take their teeth out, guys, but they're not guys that are going to protect women, and women on a visceral Darwinistic level understand that. Let's keep going here.
Aim to manipulate the female to basically mate with him as opposed to someone else, or not mate at all.
I want to talk as well about the power dynamics, right? So if someone gets more wealthy, or their status goes up, or their career takes off, and they...
All right, so hang on one second. I'm going to push this up because I got other ones to get to, and we need to get to, where is the rest of it? 36. Hang on. I wrote all these down. See, I do all my homework for you guys. I don't think you guys realize the amount of prep. I'm only a one-man show here. Please donate to the cause.
I'd love to talk about this more, because I think that this is something that sort of scares women, and it helps to flesh it out and understand this a little bit more, especially the vulnerability to the dark triad.
Yeah, well, so dark triad guys are...
All right, before we get into this, notice the setup here. The vulnerability to the dark triad. Okay, well, are women choosing the dark triad, or are they just vulnerable, innocent, helpless victims of our dark triad? Because that's the setup that he just gave right here. And he's not incorrect. Women are the vulnerable sex. Women need protection. Women need men folk to protect them. They need mate guarding. They need dad and brother and tribal affiliation, kin altruism to protect them from the outsider, from the other, right? The person that's outside the tribe, the other tribe member. But if we're going to say, but notice that it's like, oh, women are vulnerable to this. What that says, what you're doing right there is taking away the authority that he just implied by saying that women should have choice. That's the God of the, prime directive of everything. Well, are they vulnerable, or are they the ones making the choice here?
Are often very charming. They're very exciting. They're often very socially skilled. They put themselves at the center of attention. And we know that status is in part determined by the attention structure. High status people are those to whom the most people pay the most attention. So attention is a critical resource, and the attention structure influences that. High dark triad guys put themselves in the center of attention. They're often very charismatic. They have verve. They tell stories in front of the group. And so those are all cues to status. Women are attracted to status. Also, the risk taking. So these guys are risk takers. So they have the confidence, and that's another thing women are attracted to, as you well know. is self-confidence. As animals, we kind of take each other at our word. The guy seems self-confident, then he must have a lot going for him. And so they display a lot of characteristics that women find very attractive in the short run.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys are disasters.
But are they? Or is it all about the short-term mating, or is it long-term? Because right now, women are looking for those guys. They're choosing those guys because in the long term, they don't trust the beta males who apparently should be like the guys that women are getting with, who should actually, logically speaking, should want to get with, but they're not. Yet we see, marriages at an all-time low. Women complain about the fact that they can't find the right guy. They can't find their equal. They can't find a guy who's socioeconomically attractive. They can't find the guy who is above them. It's like that Steve Harvey alpha male, alpha female girl who can't find the right guy. Well, I wonder how many dark triad dudes that she's had in that period of time between, 18 and 35, I think. We need to look at those numbers. We need to look at those stats, right? But we're already casting this in women are wonderful. That's why I led with that today. David Buss thinks women are wonderful. The guy that's in the Jordan Harbinger here thinks that women are wonderful. And not because it's like they have some sinister, that's just how they've been steeped in it for all their lives and still steeped in it right now. According to the book anyways, and according to David Buss, women are choosing these guys because they're being fiendishly manipulated and harassed into having sex with these guys. But yet we look at something like 50 Shades of Grey and you look at the popularity of that story, that self-published story that was not advertised, that went from 0 sales to 65 million sales from March to December of 2012, somewhere around there, that made more money than God on the following year. I put all those stats in Rational Male Religion, by the way. The point I'm making is this: the outrageous word of mouth popularity of that story was so crazy that even like evangelical Christian women were just loving on it. Why is Twilight a big deal? Why? I mean, well, it was anyways. Why is shows like DNI 365? That's old news now. Now it's Sex Life on Netflix. I did a full video on that not too long ago as well. Why are those radically, outrageously popular? Well, because fiendish men are trying to do an end run around what women really want, which is nice guys who will read to their kids in bed and do homework with Billy. No, it's not. They're choosing that. That's your choice. There, you say choice is the prime directive. That's what they choose. Clearly, that's what they choose. They're damaged in hybristophilia, blah, blah, blah. No, 65 million women in like what was it? I forget what the entire take of the first year. I should go get the stats for that. For 50 Shades of Grey, and that's not even including the movie. the radical popularity of a self-published book of that narrative of a dark triad guy with specific needs, and women ate it up to the point where they're telling their girlfriends, "Go get this book." There's no billboards for it. There's no advertising for it. It's just a hot commodity. Go get it. $65 million later, 65 million units later, I should say. It's probably more money than that. And suddenly we see the true nature of women. Is it because they are being fiendishly manipulated into wanting Christian Grey? No, it's not. It's because that's their nature. So if you're going to tell the truth, if you're going to focus on this stuff, you need to, if you're going to tell us the truth, tell us the whole fucking truth, Dave. Tell us the whole story. Because right now, all you're doing is proving to anybody else that's in the manosphere that you seem to want to hate on so much right now, all you're doing is proving them right. Because all you do is focus on that one thing. Women are wonderful. Can't say anything unflattering about the female nature. They're the ones making the choice for those guys. I just showed you the data sets. I got a lot more than that I could put up too.
In the long run, because they're statistically more likely to cheat, more likely to fleece the woman, get into her bank account, abandon her, cheat on her, be unfaithful, trade up at a drop of a hat. So as long-term mates, these guys are disastrous, but women are attracted to, especially younger women, I should say, are attracted to them for short-term mating. As women get a bit older and get more experience on the mating market, they are less and less attracted to these guys.
Are they? Or are they less and less able to attract those guys? God damn it, man. Give the whole fucking story, Dave. Talk about the whole thing. Are they actually, are women, because women are wonderful and it doesn't matter what age they are, they're beautiful, right? Yeah, bullshit. When a woman gets to 35, 36 years old, I just showed you the Steve Harvey thing a couple of weeks ago. That woman can't get with a dark triad guy. She'd probably love to, but she can't. It's not because she has some no worldly wisdom and she's just, completed her journey of self-discovery. She can't fuck that guy. That guy doesn't want to have anything to do with her. That's why. It's not because these guys are preying. These dark triad, Lotharios are trying to take our women folk and the youngins too. Yeah, because that's what they want. Not the old chick. Go look at a dataclysm, man. Human males between the ages of 15 and 90 years old. What's the demographic that they find the most attractive? 23 years old. Imagine that. I guess that guy Rollo TOMASSI isn't so fucking crazy after all. Yeah, but it's like, oh, his explanation is not that women are less able or less attractive to that personality type or those guys. So men are fiendishly going for the youngsters. No, they can. And that's because that's what they want. And women are avoiding that because they're suddenly more worldly and wise. It's because they can't get with them. How is that not the most obvious answer? Well, it's because women are wonderful, right?
What about dark triad women? This has to be a thing.
Yeah. Well, so there are fewer dark triad women, especially with the psychopathy component. That shows the largest sex difference, where it's something like 3-to-1. Males are higher than women on psychopathy. Less sex difference on narcissism, but you do get dark triad women. I talk about them in the book as well, that these are women who are more likely to mate poach. So they don't feel any moral qualms about sleeping with their friend's boyfriend or husband. So they engage in mate poaching, either for short-term or a longer-term relationship. And they also tend to use their sexuality in instrumental ways. And so they're, for example, if you ask who is the occasional woman who sleeps with the boss in order to get a promotion, it's dark triad women who tend to do that. I actually knew of a specific case in academia where a woman who was applying for a job at this university and had slept with the chair of the search committee.
Wow.
And she
all right. Well, let's pull out of that. I wanted to focus in on the dark triad part of things right there. I have his other one up here too. I think I will show you at least 10 minutes of that. I got his other one here. Although the dark triad side of things, he more or less explains pretty well with Harbinger here. I think it's also important to remember things like this. Intelligence and physical violence emerged as being especially likely to boost men's sex partner accumulation. For high socioeconomic status to be sexually attractive to women, men must demonstrate they are also capable of physical aggressive behavior. Why am I putting that up there? Sounds pretty dark triad, right? Well, of course, women's choice. That's what they go for, of course. But that also goes back to the video where we're talking with Jason Wilson, where he was talking about how he had to put away that sort of feminine aspect of himself because women didn't want, the girls didn't like that. They didn't want that. That's this right here, man. That's this study. Yeah. I know it sounds horribly, inhumane. Shouldn't they want guys who are like smart and intelligent and funny? And yeah, they do. They just got no use for them when they're in their prime sexual years. They just don't, that's not what they're after. That's why I wrote preventive medicine, man. Between 18 and 28, they're going primarily for the physical. And then, yeah, status has something to do with that as well. And I think that there is and this is just me analyzing things or observing things, at least in the evolutionary psychology sphere these days. There is a push to think that status and social constructs anyways. And I don't mean that in terms of like social construction, but like social conventions are what's pushing things along, which is really strange to me considering it's coming from evolutionary psychologists. Status, right? That's what women want. They want status. No, they want the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break. They want the guy who's the hot guy in the what is the fireman calendar, right? 6-pack abs, 6 feet tall. We already know that women select for height. We already know that. He knows this. It's right out of his own studies. 6-pack abs, V taper, strong jawline. Like we look at the physical aspects of things. You know, physiognomy is real. Thank you, Royce, for that one. It's real. But now it's a status. Now all these dark triad guys, they try to position themselves they try to put themselves into positions of status so women will like them. Well, either that or women are just attracted to that kind of an asshole. They love assholes. They love the arrogant son of a bitch. Wow, maybe that. You know, what is it? Occam's razor, right? You know, the simplest answer is probably the correct one. Not always, but mostly. Why are we not, you know, we'll use it for everything else, but we won't use it for this? Why? Here's a great one. And this is from my very best friend in the world, Sterling Cooper. Okay. Sterling says this, being good, and this is from a male porn star. Being good in the bedroom is the most honest signal of pre-selection there is. Thank you very much, my good friend, Sterling. All right. The honest signal of pre-selection there is. If you know your way around a woman's body better than she does, then she knows you fuck. Yes. Well, how come men are considered superheroes if they have lots of notches and women are sluts when they don't? Yeah, well, beside the lock and key analogy, on a visceral level, even just a subconscious level, women know that if you are a guy that other women want to fuck and other men want to be, you're probably a high value guy. How perceptually speaking, contextually, let's just be honest. But if you're the kind of guy that, if you're Gaston, that's what Gaston was. Everybody wanted to be Gaston. Remember Beauty and the Beast? Here you go, Mackenzie. The girls wanted to get with him. Gaston was very full of himself, very much dark triad, right? I mean, according to David Buss, anyways. He's full of maybe positioned himself, and he might have just borderline been a little bit sexually harassing in his approaches. Maybe it's because he thinks highly of himself and has confidence and actually, has a place to go and has ambition. I'm not saying it's Gaston, okay? I realize it's a cartoon. But that's the character. That's the archetype. And that's why Beauty and the Beast is a thing. Because that doesn't happen. Usually doesn't happen. The girls in the village wanted to bang Gaston. Gaston had his pick. He wanted to get with Belle. Belle said, no, I'd rather have this brooding emo guy that's, holed up in the castle over there. Well, then that's a movie, right? You're dragging the plot of the movie is just, what was it? Belle exercising her feminine wiles that only she can do. And she brings him out and he becomes the prince. He's no longer the horrible brooding beast who hates love and loves hate, right? No, now he's the prince. And you know what? The prince that Belle, brings out of his shell as the beast, that guy's a poor choice compared to Gaston. Really. I mean, and that's why it's a fantasy. That's why it's a fairy tale. But the fairy tale speaks to, the realities, right? It's exceptional because that's not how the world actually works. So thank you, Sterling, for that wonderful example, because now Sterling is going to go head to head with Dr. David Buss, and he doesn't even know I'm doing this. Okay. So one last thing I need to throw up here. Women are substantially more prone to sexual disgust than men. In contrast to minimal sex efforts in many psychological domains, women and men differ dramatically in their base level of sexual disgust. On average, women are more sexually disgusted than men, which would explain why men have such a variety of interests in porn. These sex differences are large and highly replicable, with effect sizes measured by Cohen's. He's this researcher. I don't give you the numbers or anything right here. If you want to, I will also give you it's the University of Texas. This is as far back as 2020, so it's fairly recent. So that's that. Let's also look really quickly here. This is something that I think I've read before from Rob, but it's in low risk, short-term context. Men were willing to form relationships with physically unattractive mates to avoid missing out on a mating opportunity. Men are more willing to lower their standards to avoid lost mating opportunities. There's a lot of differences. As we said, sexual disgust. The reason I put those two together is because when you take into consideration sexual disgust, and you also take into consideration that men have much lower standards or none at all, while women have men have no attraction floor, women have an attraction floor. That's why hypergamy works at or above her sexual market value. That is hypergamy. So now when we take that into the realm of dark triad, when we take that into the realm of women are wonderful, how does that affect the discussion that we're going to have with Dr. Buss? I'll tell you, because we're going to move on to this video file right now. And it is this one. I have to cue it up. Forgive me.
Welcome to the Huberman Lab podcast, where we discuss.
This is Huberman. Again, fair use. And I'm just going to scrub it up here because I don't have much time left in today's show, but I want to push it a little bit forward and go to, where is it? 3838. There it is. Right about. There we go. This is about
whose laboratory studies stress and tools to combat stress. That's great. It's yet more incentive for people to develop self-regulatory mechanisms for themselves. I'm guessing many of the features of deception in this context were present long before internet dating. And so it's somewhat dark to think about, but is deception built into this dance that we call mate selection, and has it been built in for a long time, or is this something that you think has emerged more as people are approaching each other through these electronic web-based mediums?
Yeah, I mean, some forms of deception have been there for a long time over human evolutionary history. So one form of deception, which we haven't mentioned, is deception about whether you're interested in a long-term committed relationship or a short-term hookup. And so there's deception about that, especially on the part of men. So men who are interested, like on Tinder, it has been reported, although Tinder denies this, there's been reported that something like 30% of the men on Tinder are either married or in long-term committed relationships, and they're looking for something on the side. But in terms of successfully attracting a mate, the overt display that, hey, I'm interested in just a short-term hookup, I'm interested in sex, so I want to have sex right now, let's just go back to my apartment. These are very ineffective tactics. And so effective tactics for men are often displaying cues to long-term interest. And of course, that's effective for a woman who's seeking a long-term interest. And so that's a deception. So we find.
All right. So this also, maybe this is boomer speaking. This is boomer speak, or maybe this is women are wonderful speak. But the premise here that he begins from is that the ultimate goal state of having sex for either men or for women should be long-term committed monogamous marriage and family formation. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but to presume it's the only thing, or to use it as your starting point so that you can say men bad, women good, because that ultimately that's what women need. They need long-term security. They just want to be able to maximize their years between 18 and 28 where they can exercise that sexual agency, right? Having that power over men for a long time. Now, how do I know this? How do I know that's where he's starting from? Because if you remember in the previous video, he said, hey, women who are 35 and 36, they're smarter than these dark trad guys, and they don't want to have anything to do with them. No, their priorities are different. First of all, they can't attract those guys anymore. Certainly, they're at a very great disadvantage in the sexual market, in a global sexual marketplace, when their competition is 23, 24, 25 years old, and they're 35, 36 years old. Wow, I don't know whatever his demographics are. But you have to take into account, and shame on you for not doing this, because you have to take into account evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology in all of this. That's, you can adhere to women are wonderful all you'd like, but it doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the game on the ground. The ground game is right there. What's your strategy? What's your tactics? Of course, men are going to adaptively try to find ways to solve their reproductive problem, just as in the internet age and just as they did in the medieval times, man, just as they did as far back as ancient Egypt, man. I'll guarantee you there was players back then too. There's people trying to figure out, how do I go from single and sexless to, how do I have game? How do I go from single and sexless to getting into a relationship, getting laid, having a family, whatever else? I'm not saying it's not a noble goal. I mean, yeah, we need family formation. That's not where I'm going with this. What I'm saying is that the premise for men and women getting together and villainizing men's sexual strategy versus lionizing and deifying women's, because choice is the god from which everything proceeds. If that's the case, we need to look at both sides, and you're not doing that. That's the problem. Write the book, Women Are Behaving Badly. That will never be forthcoming from him. I'll write that book before he does. Maybe I should. I'll write that book before he does, because it's the women are wonderful dynamic. It's that we can't put anything, because we live in a gynocentric social order that punishes the women behaving badly, that book, but it rewards all the kind of rationalization, especially coming from a guy who should be a notable authority on this, who should be able to have an objective understanding of all this, but yet everything that comes out of his mouth is, well, it's because women are so smart and so savvy that they don't want to get with those players anymore. No, they do. They just can't. Or even just like why is that not the first concept? Like, even if they can't, explain why they can and why they can't, and use that as, and add that to the argument. But that is not even an afterthought. Really quickly, you got to see Jordan Peterson, but I did, and I actually considered using it as part of today's show, but we're already really out of time, and it's already like video heavy as it is. I will use that, however, when I do the JBP show, which is Jordan B. Peterson. I am going to use that here. Yes, I know. I have seen it, and I'm still kind of picking through it. There's so many good spots in there that I can use to illustrate red pill examples. But again, we are never going to have an accurate, objective understanding of intersexual dynamics if we only focus on men bad, women good.
In our studies of deception, that men tend to exaggerate the depths of their feelings for a woman, exaggerate how similar they are and how aligned they are in their values and religious orientations and political values and so forth. And so I think there's deception around that. And I think that's probably an evolutionarily recurrent form of deception that women have defenses against, by the way. But I think that modern internet dating opens the door for certain types of deception that were, at a minimum, more difficult to accomplish ancestrally. So like things like photoshopping. Wasn't available back then. Plus, we evolved in the context of small group living, where you not only had your own personal observations of someone's qualities, you had also your relatives, your friends, allies, the social reputation that someone had. And these are all critical sources of information that are less available in modern environments.
I would argue that they are more available in modern environments, in a global sexualized marketplace that is essentially dependent on social media, and women are addicted to some social media. I would argue exactly the opposite. Now, I understand what you're saying. We evolved in small social groups, and it's hard for women to parse that out, but they're still using the same mechanics in a global sexual marketplace that they do in a local sexual marketplace. So it's like, I got to ask my girlfriends, is this guy real? What's the first thing women do? Why is Instagram the #1 dating app? Not Tinder, not Bumble, not Hinge, Instagram. What's the first thing they do? Oh, this guy's hot. I met him in a club. Let's go creep around on his socials, right? Let's go see what he's really about. Is he cool enough to hang out with? What is his picture? That's basically your sex resume, essentially. And what does he look like? Is he hot enough? Is he cute enough? Does he have a lot of friends? Do guys want to be him, and do women want to fuck him? The mechanics don't change. The sample size most definitely does, but it's not that's not a hindrance right now. If anything, that's a benefit. And women are still, relying on that. He's not wrong about this, evolving in a small social thing. And there was repercussions. There were social repercussions if a guy was a player, because it meant her brother would go kick his ass. That's why men had to go and ask their girlfriend's permission from their dad to marry her. That's why that's a thing. We think, oh, that's horrible. They owned her. No, that's not. It was actually kin altruism. It was essentially a form of mate guarding, but it was actually a form of DNA guarding. Father, I sure as shit don't want, some scumbag marrying my daughter. You better damn well ask me for permission to marry her. If you don't, the answer is no. And that's not because he's simping for his daughter. No, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I have a genetic interest in making sure that she's with the best guy that I think she should be with. Now, is that the way it's going to work in a feminine primary social order? No, because women, I want to fall in love and I want to marry him because of this and this and this or whatever else. And I don't give a shit what my dad says. And I don't care what my brother says. Shit, I can show you studies that show that when women are ovulating, young women are ovulating, they avoid contact with their dads and they avoid contact with their male kin. I guess that Marty Hazelton, in fact, a student of his, did that study, did that work. You know this shit, man. Why am I explaining this shit to you? I'm just some schmuck on the internet. Why? Why don't you know this? Why is that not the first thing that comes out of your mouth? Remember when I tell you guys, like, I get really frustrated with and I have no problem with Jeffrey Miller, other than the fact that he's all about poly, whatever, but he should know better. That's why I have a problem. There's a big problem with poly as far as forming families and long-term commitments. And, it's funny is later on in this episode or in this show, he actually talks about that. Oh, maybe poly is going to be a solution for us. Get the fuck out of here. You know the stats. You know the levels of violence that happen as a result of poly, but you're going to go and feed us that? Come on, man. So I don't have a problem. So Jeffrey Miller knows his shit. Don't get me wrong. Statistically, scientifically, empirically, he knows his shit. He just ignores it in practice or tries to force fit his way of thinking into it. And then you got like Steven Pinker, brilliant guy. But I don't think that his solutions, like at the end of every damn talk, he can talk about, men are interested in things and women are interested in people and give you like 12 different reasons why, 12 different gender specific differences between men and women in a TED talk. And at the end of the talk is like, but I'm a feminist and here's how it works for feminism. Why am I listening to you, man? Like, you have got all the study. Like, that's why I really like Rob Henderson. He hasn't sold out yet, but we'll see. Steve Stewart Williams, fantastic. I highly suggest those guys. Rolf, well, Rolf's not really. Rolf, go check out Rolf too, right? There's some other guys that I like too. David Buss used to be one, but now it's more like, how can I force fit all of this data into the social narrative that I know will either get me attention and get me status and get me all this shit that I think Dark Triad guys have by shitting on Dark Triad guys. Essentially, that's what he's doing, right? Why would you want to be in a high profile? Why would you want to be the best known evolutionary psychologist on planet Earth? Why would you position him? Is he positioning himself? Or is he there because he's a badass? Or is he a badass because he's there? It's chicken or the egg. But again, this is the frustration that I have. Like, people want to ask me, why are you frustrated with Dr. Pinker or Dr. Warren Farrell, Jordan Peterson? Because you should know better, man. It's in your book. It's right there. I read it. How do you think I got my fucking notes? What are you saying, man? It's like, again, like, my perspective is I connect dots. And these are the guys who give me the dots to connect. And like, this is what I'm getting. What are you getting, Dr. Buzz? Men bad. Oh, shit.
It's because, people migrate, they move from place to place. They can close down one internet profile and put up another, or they could have 6 going simultaneously. So the modern environment opens up the door for forms of deception that weren't available to the same degree ancestrally.
I see. Very interesting. Would you mind touching on some of the features that are selected for in terms of sexual partner choice? We talked a little bit about mate choice, but in terms of sexual partner choice, are there any good studies exploring what people are selecting for, or is it that they are both just in a state of pure hypothalamic drive. You know, I'm a neuroscientist after all.
Yeah.
And therefore it's hard to recreate in the laboratory.
No, we do know something about that, and we know something about how the preferences for a sex partner differ from preference for a long-term mate. There is overlap, of course.
Okay, so alpha fucks, beta bucks.
But one thing is physical appearance. So physical appearance for women is important in long-term mating, not as important as it is for men, but it becomes more important in short-term mating. And so is the guy good looking? So those physical attributes are more important for women. They remain important for men, physical appearance, in short-term mating, but with the footnote that men are willing to drop their standards in short-term mating if it's low commitment, low risk, just sex, without entangling commitments.
Is that entanglement?
Women are more likely to prioritize what I call bad boy qualities. So guys who are very self-confident, guys who are
dark triad guys, maybe?
Strut, guys who are a little arrogant, guys who are risk-taking, guys who defy conventions. Women are more attracted to those guys in short-term mating than long-term mating. And whereas in long-term mating, they go more for the good dad qualities. Is this guy dependable? Is he going to be a good father to my children? And then also in short-term mating, women use that mate copying heuristic. That is, if there are thousands of other women who find him attractive, women find him attractive.
Wow. Does that not in some way validate our good friend Sterling Cooper's thing? Does that not is that not the same thing? Yes. Guess what? Thank you, David Buss. David Buss 2021 has caught up to the Red Pill 2005. Women want men who other men want to be, and other women want to fuck. That's what it is. Yeah, you are 100% right. Thank you. Golf clap. Well done. Bravo. Thank you for catching up to everything here. What? Let me just keep going.
And so that's why you have the groupie phenomenon. So with rock stars, for example, there are thousands of screaming women, all of whom want to sleep with this famous rock star, and they use that as information. They find if you took like a still photo of some of these rock stars and asked women how attractive the guy is versus tell him he's a famous rock star and showed the thousands of women screaming at him, they judge him entirely differently.
Okay, this is a good example because I'm going to do a future video about this. Actually, I think I've probably talked about this before. Fame, the perception of fame has never been easier to create. What he was just saying right here when it comes to status, when it comes to like social proof. I mean, guys like Mystery figured this one out a long time ago. It's all about the perception. I said this about Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead, right? If you take a picture of Lemmy from 1973, you put that on Tinder, see how many chicks would go for Lemmy? Probably we wouldn't get very many replies. And if the replies he got would probably not be the kind of women that he would probably want to fuck. But Lemmy Kilmister, from 0 to 70 years old when he died, has probably got a notch count well into the thousands because he decided that he wasn't going to be happy with the stars that he was dealt, and he became a rock star. And yes, so there is a status application that comes along with that. It's not because Lemmy was like super good looking, but it was because he was a rock star and he had an attitude. Most likely at the time, and probably certainly by today's standards, he would be considered dark triad. He lives by his own rules. Well, you just want to be a rock star because you're full of yourself. You're just an arrogant son of a bitch. Yeah. You're goddamn right on you.
You're goddamn right.
Yes. And because women find that irresistible. Again, 50 Shades of Grey, right?
In terms of his attractiveness. Or even, and this is an important point. that women's attraction to men is more context specific and varies more across contexts than men's attraction to women. And so I'll give you just an example of that. This is a female colleague of mine went to a conference, an academic conference, and she found the organizer of this conference to be really attractive, and then saw him 6 months later and wondered, well, what was I thinking? He doesn't seem very attractive at all. And what it was is, when he was the organizer, he was at the center of the attention structure. Mm-hmm. You know, he was the guy up on stage directing everybody, and everyone was attending to him. And then when he was just a normal presenter at a conference, he didn't command the attention structure like he did in that when he was the.
Okay, thank you, Dr. David Buss. You've just described my essay, The Contextual Alpha. And guys tell me this all the time. What doesn't it think that you know, you could be an alpha one day and be a beta the another day? Yeah, for sure. It's called the contextual aspect of being alpha. Again, alpha is not a demographic. It is a mindset. It also has to do with perception. As I was saying before, you can manufacture fame today very easily. You can manufacture social proof or the perception of it. You can manufacture pre-selection or the perception of it. Never been easier in the history of humanity to do that. Now, the other thing he's talking about here is, well, I found him so attractive when he was teaching, right? Like, why do young women fall in love with their college professors? Because he's in the classroom. You see them, sitting out having a bagel somewhere. Then yeah, maybe he's not as hot as you thought he was, but he's there because he commands attention. He is the leader. He has command presence. He is the guy who is the authority in that classroom. He has instant social proof. He has instant pre-selection because he's the guy who's commanding. He's perceptually, he's the guy that other men want to be and other women want to fuck in that classroom. Take him out of that environment. He's domain dependent. Yes. Take him out of that environment and he becomes just like a schlub eating a bagel at a stand somewhere. So yeah, exactly. I 100% agree, but that's a very important understanding of red pill dynamics, right? So yeah, perceptually speaking, women are very suspect to context. As I was saying before, what did I tell you about emotionalism versus rationalism? What did I tell you about men's language versus women's language? Men's language is based on content, the information, what is being related to. He just said that what is women's language? It's context based. How did it make me feel? What he say made me feel? Not only the information's important, but it's secondary to what the feeling was, the associative emotion from that communication. That's why women get together just to communicate, because they take pleasure in just communicating with other women. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just the differences between the two of them. You only come to sort of a head in all of this when you expect men to be just like women. Well, you should understand, men don't listen. No, we listen. We just don't communicate the same way that you do. Unless we're really trying to speak a foreign language, because we actually give a shit about what you have to say and wanting to get, probably because we want to fuck you. But if we have to live with you, sure, we have to have some sort of communication. And men hate that. That's why they don't understand. Oh, men don't understand me. Yeah, because you're not speaking the same language, brother. I'm going to fast forward this up a little bit to 54, because this is where shit gets interesting, right about here.
Where the man believes he is the genetic father of a child, but it turns out he's not. Might be the mailman or the next door neighbor or the guy she's having an affair with. So mistaken paternity and genetic cuckoldry is just one way to capture.
Named after the cuckoo bird, right?
Named after the cuckoo bird, yes.
Right, who sneaks its eggs into the nest of the other, destroys the future offspring of the bird, and then basically offloads all the work onto another father.
Parasitizes. Yeah.
Stop right there. That was the definition of cuckoldry. That right there. Foisting the parental investment responsibilities and the resources and everything from one father to another father. That's cuckoldry. Okay, that is the outcome, the product of cuckoldry is that. A woman deceives or in some way convinces that guy, but the end effect being one man takes over the genetic responsibilities of ensuring the future DNA, the future genomic legacy of another man. That is the definition.
The parental investment of different bird species. So anyway, so I think that, and there's other sources of evidence that I think point. So one of the sources of evidence that initially seemed to support the dual mating strategy hypothesis was ovulation shifts. So in other words,
I want to get to this.
It looked like from the early studies that when women are ovulating, these are among non-pill taking women, women not on hormonal contraceptives, that they experienced a preference shift toward more men who were masculine and symmetrical, which were hypothesized markers for good genes. And there's an explanation for that. But it turns out the effects of ovulation on women's mate preferences are far weaker than the initial studies looked like. And in fact, some larger scale studies have failed to replicate them entirely.
Yeah. So this is his hit against Marty Hazelton for a meta study that has since been disproven. And he knows this because Marty Hazelton had a talk with Dr. Godsod about exactly this. The findings of ovulatory shift are actually very, very robust, according to her words, but they have been subject by the this meta study stuff as being like less than important, less than significant, of course, by the APA or whoever's doing the judging of all this, due to P hacking. And I don't mean like dick hacking, I mean the letter P hacking. And what that is it's sort of like massaging the numbers so you can get the outcome that you want out of all of this. I do not have the time to like get into this too much here, but he understands P hacking. He understands what happened. And yet he's still going to lean over into another theory that he thinks works better than ovulatory shift.
And so it's that was one of the key sources of evidence, these ovulation shifts, that women were going after good genes, because it's only when she's ovulating and she can get pregnant by having sex with another man that it would make sense for her to have sex with another man. And there was even some early evidence that women were timing their affairs, timing sex with their affair partners to coincide with when they were ovulating. But as I said, some of these subsequent studies have failed to replicate these early findings, calling into question the dual mating strategy notion. And so I think I've shifted my views on this and now endorse the mate switching hypothesis as a more likely explanation for why most women have affairs.
Well, the way you describe this makes me wonder if when of the women that have affairs, do those affairs tend to be more long-lasting than the affairs that men have? Because the way you described it is men are seizing an opportunity. It's a sort of a carpe diem type approach to infidelity. And women potentially, on average, are capitalizing on something that is longer term. Now, of course, if they're doing this around ovulation, then it would constrain the amount of times they would need to see or have sex with this other person that they're not married to. But is there any evidence?
Guys catch that? Married to. What did I say? Last week or the week before? We base success on marriage. We base all of our stats on marriage. We base the single family homes stats on marriage. We base this idea that men are not involved with they just hit it and quit it, and they're not involved with their kids anymore. We base those numbers on whether the guy is married to that woman or not. It makes no difference if their actual involvement with their kid is like very, very significant. They're not married, they don't make the stat. This right here is an example of, well, they're not married, and this is very important. I have to stop this here because this is what's going to define cuckoldry for these guys.
That women have more ongoing affairs and men have more transient affairs.
Yes, yeah, there is. And so if you look at people who have affairs, there's a sex difference there, so that women tend to have affairs with one person and become emotionally involved with that one person over time. Men who have affairs tend to have affairs with a larger number of affair partners. And so, which then by definition can't be long last. You can't have long-term affairs with 6 different partners.
Yeah, unless he's juggling multiple phone accounts or something.
Right. And some men try to do that, but I think could be very taxing.
Yeah, well, and in this day and age, it's easier to meet more people by virtue of online communications, but it's also easier to get caught, meaning it's harder to conceal interactions. Everything's in the cloud anyway. A good friend of mine who's former very high level in special operations said, anything that's not in your head and only in your head is available for others to find should they want it.
Yeah.
I think that's largely true.
Yeah. So and phone information, text messages, and people are very good at hacking into their partners' phones, computers. And then also there are video cameras everywhere. So sneaking off to this a quiet restaurant, I mean, there are probably 8 video cameras that can record.
Dude, we live in the age of Tinder. Nobody's going sneaking off to a quiet restaurant.
You walking in and out of that restaurant.
Everything can be found.
Yes.
I'm certain of that. You mentioned emotional affairs and financial infidelity as well.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna stop it there. I have to push it up to the last part here. Anyways, later on in this, and you can go check this out. I put the link is already in the description right now. You can watch the whole thing if you choose to. The difference between I want to talk about a little bit about ovulatory shift here, and I want to talk about the mate switching hypothesis, because he relies on this almost like uniquely in the book. And the idea is that, well, we're going to discontinue because the ovulatory shift is unflattering to women's nature. It's unflattering to say, well, women will, black pill doomers just jump all over this, right? Why would I bother getting with a woman if she's just going to want to get with Chad a little bit later, right? Why would I bother investing myself in all of that? Well, you got a point. If hypergamy is a straitjacket, sure, it's not. There's a lot of variables that go with that, but that's the point. It's like, well, when a woman is in ovulatory shift and she's in what's called the proliferative phase of menstruation, that's when she's going to be most sexually proceptive. That's what they called it. She's looking to get fucked, right? She's looking for the hot guy in the foam cannon party. And later on, I shouldn't say that, earlier when he was talking about cuckoldry, the reason I drew attention to that is because the marriage aspect of that is all that they know. And this is common to so many people, so many well-meaning researchers too. They only see cuckoldry rates in terms of, are the couple married or are they not? Cuckoldry, as he said, is a one man taking over the parental investment responsibilities and liabilities and resource drag of another man. That's cuckoldry. End of story. Okay, how do we get there? Well, we can get there 2 ways. That woman can go fuck a guy when she's 23 years old, have his babies, and expect a single dad, or expect you to wife up a single mother. And guess what? You're a cuckold. Jack Murphy, you're a cuckold. Maybe you embrace it. Maybe you've eroticized your jealousy aspect and you'd want to be a cuck, right? Or you can do it the other way. You could be in a committed married relationship, which is the only way they think of it. And that woman can go out, bang some other guy, have sex with him, get knocked up, and try to convince you that the baby's yours. That's another way of cuckoldry, right? But they both achieve the same thing. We only have numbers, or we only think the valid numbers for cuckoldry are the other one, are the married side, like the committed marriage, which I called proactive cuckoldry. There's also reactive cuckoldry, meaning that the woman already had 2 or 3 babies, maybe by 2 or 3 guys, and you wife her up as a single mother. Congratulations, you signed up for your own cuckoldry, because it's the same effect at the end of the day. You now have financial and emotional and resource drag and everything else that goes along with cuckoldry, even if she had, except for, here's a great thing, is we call you a superhero. You're a great guy. You're not the stepdad. You're the dad who stepped up. That's the difference. But again, here we have it, black and white. Oh, well, married, this is a very, very low cuckoldry rate, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. If you define it in terms of, proactive cuckoldry, yeah, maybe you're right. Whatever the numbers are, right? Maybe it's higher than they want to, pitch, but cuckoldry is cuckoldry. But how you get there, is kind of irrelevant if you're there. So that's that part. The other part I wanted to talk about is the ovulatory shift versus the mate switching strategy. And again, this comes from a feminine primary goal state. Okay. These guys they don't understand the difference between arousal and attraction. Arousal is alpha fucks. Attraction is beta bucks. The guy that she saw in the classroom who was teaching the classroom, and she was really attracted to that guy at that talk or whatever. And then later on, 6 months later, she sees him just like walking around, having a coffee or whatever, and she's not hot for him anymore. That's attraction. She sees a guy, she sees the, Thunder from Down Under, and she sees a guy, she watches, porn or whatever. She sees the hot guy in the foam cannon party or the hot fireman in the fireman calendar. That's arousal. Tall, hot, V-taper, big guns and ready to rock, young, dumb, and fully, what, right? That's arousal. That's the alpha fuck side. You will never hear these guys talk about that. Never in a million fucking years will you hear them talk about the alpha side. Jordan Peterson only thinks the beta buck side exists. This guy, maybe he knows the alpha fuck side, but let's just put that over here. Women really want, long-term success. That's why he said, women who are older, they don't want those guys anymore because they're smart and more worldly. No, they're not. And if you knew anything about the alpha fuck side of hypergamy, you would not make such a foolish statement. So anyway, I think I'm going to cut it here. He talks more about the dark triad traits later on in that video. So I'm going to pull that out there. But I also want to talk. So here's the difference, because people have called me on this. They say, well, what about ovulatory shift versus the mate switching theory? The mate switching theory is based on the beta buck side of hypergamy. Okay. Meaning that's the only thing that makes any difference to women. Right? So women only have affairs. Women only want to, have extramarital, extra whatever paired sex with guys because they're forming these emotional bonds and they're more attracted to that guy and his status and what he has. And there could be some truth to that, but they're fucking guys because they're hot for those guys. They're not because they're an investment. All right. So maybe it's an emotional thing. Maybe it's something else, but it's mate switching versus ovulatory shift. Ovulatory shift is real easy to see. It's real easy to I can show it to you on OnlyFans. I can show it to you on Tinder. I can show it to you on Fresh and Fit. You want an example? I'll be happy to give you 1 million of them for ovulatory shift. That's especially for short-term mating. There you go. Long-term mating, maybe I don't see why the two can't coexist. Mate switching theory is that, women, once they are with a guy and they've consolidated on a guy in the long term, marriage being the benchmark for all of this again. And that turned out to be a bad bet for them. He didn't turn into the winner that she wants to, wait at the finish line and fuck. Well, then maybe she wants to switch. Maybe that prompts her or motivates her to want to get with a new guy. Also, we can also see this evidenced in divorce rates amongst women who get a promotion at a job. They start making more money than the man that they married, that maybe at the time he was making more, or maybe they were about the same. She fell in love with him, did followed her heart, right? And then now she's 35. She met this new guy at the company. Now she's got a promotion, and she dumps the guy who's the garbage man for the guy who's the exec. That could be an example of mate switching for sure. And certainly in terms of status and long-term security, that's understandable. But the best part about this, or the reason why this is such, the reason why he sort of changed his tune on all of this is, first of all, hypergamy and ovulatory shift is very unflattering to women are wonderful. But it's also the fact that this guy wants you to think in terms of, well, women have prudence and they're smart and they know better than these dark triad guys. In fact, they know so much that they are prompted to infidelity because of it. That's the mate switching theory, right? It's this guy is better off. He's a better long-term prospect for me. The other guy that I got with, the guy that I married, since that's the benchmark, he's not. And so therefore I'm going to jump ship. Well, that might be actually the case. I don't see why there can't be both of them together, but one sounds better than the other, doesn't it? One sounds prudent. One sounds like men aren't living up to their shit. One of them sounds like, well, may the best man win. And women are right to not choose you. Thank you, Jordan Peterson. Well, if that's the case, then if a woman mate switches, as Dr. Buss here is talking about, then she's right to do so. Why wouldn't she? It's in her best interests to leave that schmuck and get with the guy who's the higher power guy, because now she's at a different level and she can go and get these guys. Well, whether that's realistic or not is kind of like, that it's over their head. Then nobody's going to think about that. Thank you, PP, for that. PP. So at this stage, it's like, what to say that it's all just like that it's all just about mate switching is to ignore the obvious. Again, you have the data. You can see this black and white. We see this every single day. This is why guys in the manosphere, PUAs, dating coaches, whatever you want, the better guys in the sphere. I would like to gloss myself. I like to think I'm one of the better guys in the sphere. I do my homework. I understand what this guy's talking about. In fact, I don't think anybody in the sphere has done anything on Dr. David Buss or Justin Baldoni for that matter, or even Jack Murphy and you are here. Nobody's doing that. I am. I'm the one who has to connect these dots here. And so I'm here showing this stuff off, but yet I'm the schmuck. I'm the idiot because I don't have a degree. I don't have a DR. I'm not Professor Emeritus Dr. Rollo Tomassi, right? So what the fuck do I know? Well, I know enough to see that you have the data because you're the data I'm quoting and you're still ignoring it. That's why I'm frustrated with you fuckwits. That's why I'm frustrated with Warren Farrell, who I like. I like all of these guys. I like David Buss, as boomer as he is. I think he's a brilliant guy and has lots of good stats, lots of good data. And then at the end of it, it's like, yeah, throw it out the window. Women are wonderful. Steven Pinker. Yeah, men and women are different. Here's 12 ways they are. Yeah, but at the end, women are wonderful. Dr. Jordan Peterson. Yeah, well, I kind of know what hypergamy is. But they're, these women, if they don't choose you and you hate women just because of that, well, that's on you. And women are right to reject you. You know why? Women are wonderful. That's why. The roommates, right? Well, this anti-marriage thing is just, it's bringing us down and it goes against our Christian, conservative values and our convictions. And it's really rattling our cage from an ideological perspective. But you know what? These guys are wrong. They're not, living up to their potential. You know why? Because women are wonderful. All those girls that are on Fresh and Fit, that's just those ratchet ass hoes from Brick Hell. They whip them out of the club. They're not representative of women in general because women in general are wonderful. That's why. And as long as you are still thinking in feminine, correct terms, it will never change for you. People say, well, Rollo, how do we initiate change? How do we get back to a good spot? How do we, minus the meteor striking Earth, how do we get back to a good spot with women? How do we go back to 1950s and have mother knows or father knows best and leave it to Beaver? How do we get back to that idealized, romanticized state? You don't. You go forward, you dumbass. You go forward. And the only way you go forward is by understanding the differences here and not obfuscating the obvious, connecting the dots that these guys aren't going to connect. And the only way you do that is get past a feminine correct understand. You have to unlearn. Remember, you must unlearn. That's what you have learned, right? Well, what you must unlearn is feminine correctness. Because I don't care how good a statistician you are, how good a research, scientist you are. I don't care how many studies you do or meta studies or whatever. I don't give a one flying fuck about that. If you're doing it within the framework of feminine, women are wonderful. If you're doing it within that framework, that thematic, we got this really unflattering data, but how can we spin this? Right? If that's where you're at, you're part of the problem. Until you can see both sides, until you can present both sides, until you can tell the story and tell the truth by telling the whole fucking truth, then you're fucking worthless. You've got to be able to. God damn it! That's why I'm so stressed on these guys. It's because it's there. You have this mound of evidence that you did 25, 30 years of field working in colleges and teaching classes and doing all this other stuff, and you go, I don't know. It's these dark triad guys. They're arrogant and cocky and sons of bitches, and women really don't want them. Bullshit. It's right here in black and white. I can see it. How do you not see it? Well, because women are wonderful. That's why. It's pervasive. It's endemic. It's like, what is it? A fish doesn't know it's wet because it's been in water its entire life. That's pretty much the analysis. So, all right. Oh, did they actually have him on? Did they finally have AMS on? They had AMS on, and then I found out the red pill with him, and then I found Rollo. Yeah, I'll tell you what, the roommates have kind of dropped the ball recently. I would not be surprised to see Hafiz and the rest of these guys go like full on Christian stuff. Hey, more power to them. Do what you're going to do, but don't call yourself a red pill, and don't think you have some sort of analytical take on any of this, because it's hogwash. All right, I'm almost done. I'm sorry I went way too long, and my dogs are outside the studio right now barking at me. When do we get to go out? Let's see, what else? What are you saying, Torsha? Oh, I said Torsha. It must be simping for you. I put her up on the screen. There you go. I'm guilty. Rational Male wants to know if you are selling your books as a set on holiday. No, and I don't sell them as a set, period. I'll tell you why, because I got fucked for doing that. I was on they have a thing on Amazon where you can sell your books as a series. And in general, I thought it was a pretty good idea. But the people who control Amazon's website are not the same people who control KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. And so that's like the people who do my Kindle books and my print books. And they're not the ones who put it up on Amazon. Amazon sells it from them, and they are an affiliate, but the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. And they really screwed me around because I'm trying to link them and they weren't linking right. And then I added a fourth book to the series, and then I've got like multiple copies of it. And it's just like, it was just a clusterfuck. So I was like, nope, no more series. I'm done. If you guys want to get them, they are a series, but buy them individually. I'm not selling them as a series. I'm done with that shit. Let's see. Oh, Aaron asked me one last thing. What was it? What did Aaron have to say? I want to go back here because that was a pretty good question. There's one last thing I wanted to get to. I'm on a holiday schedule from here on out, guys, just so you guys know. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Oh, is this? No, that wasn't it. Damn it. I had Aaron's stuff here, and I forgot what I was going to say. No, Mark Martin, it's not you. Was that it? No, that's funky. Aaron, there you are. Did I put this up? I think I did. Rollo, have you thought about redoing your first book into an easy-to-read handbook? That's why I wanted to save this till the end. Yes, I am. It's going to be called the Rational... Well, it's not a handbook per se, but I guess it is. It's called the Player's Handbook. It's going to be game-oriented. That's as close as I'm going to get to it. If you want a stripped-down version of my book, you can go read... Rich Cooper's Unplugged Alpha. It's much, I've been told it is a much easier read. I did the intro to it. I also read the intro to it on his Audible files. So that's actually me talking. So if you want a stripped down version of The Rational Male, that's a good place to start. However, most people would rather get the, like, what did Rich calls it, like reading my book is like drinking from a fire hose. I would say that like his is like drinking from a garden hose. Not taking anything away from it, but endorsed by me, just so you know. And then I also have the Player's Handbook, which is coming out next year. I'm going to have to wait till January to get this thing off the ground because I have so much crazy traveling to do. I would probably be done with it by now if I hadn't already been to, let's see, Oklahoma for the Pat Campbell's Memorial. I went to Miami for a full week. I went to Dallas for a full week. I might actually end up in Miami again after Christmas, depending on what the schedule is and if I have to close on a property out there. And then I will also be in Houston the 7th, 8th, and 9th for George Gammon's Rebel Capitalist. I will also be there with Justin Waller from Justin Waller Frank. You guys know who Justin is. I will be there. Torsha, if you would like to join us down there, you are more than welcome. But you'll have to go get an invite from George Gammon, or go like sign up anyways if that's something you want to do. But Robert Kiyosaki will be there. I'll be there as well. And that is, like I said, in Houston, January 7th through the 9th. And then later on in that month, I will be back in probably Miami, or I have to fly into Cape Coral, which I guess would be Fort Myers. And then I'm going to be in Cape Coral for about a week. And then during that week, I might end up in Miami, depending on what we can arrange, logistics and such. As far as my schedule coming up next, Wednesday, I will have a pre-recorded show. There will be no Rule Zero on Saturday, clearly, because it is Christmas. And Sunday's show, I'm still debating on whether I'm going to do one or not. If I do, it's highly likely it will be a pre-record as well, simply because I have family coming in on Monday, and they'll be here through January 1st. So that's going to be it. But I will have some. Always check the Clip channel. Always check. I mean, if you're not subscribed to this channel and not subscribed to the Clips channel, and you want to complain about how we're at 3 hours and 48 minutes, well, then the Clips channel is probably for you. So do check that out. I have 2 channels for a reason, but I will be doing some shorter form stuff probably during this week. That won't be more than 30 minutes, I promise you. And I'll probably on Sunday, I'll do a pre-record as well. That's what I got going on. If you want to see cute pictures of me and Ned and Bambi, you can go to my Instagram and look at us there. I just put up a one quick hit reel, or was it real? No, it's a story on my Instagram of me in the rehearsal studio with Trial of Ascension. We are almost done with the creative side of 4 more songs, and we'll probably proceed to recording in the new year. So that's coming up there. Thank you, Torsha, for putting that up there. She is my magician's assistant. There you go. And she is going to be my new baby mama. She is she's a sister wife. She's a Rollo TOMASSI sister wife. Yes. I'm 100% serious about that. Totally serious about that. Yes. And Donovan, don't ban her for saying so, because this is our shtick. All right. It's our shtick, and we're sticking by it. Okay, guys. I need a son. I've got to have a son somehow. Son of Rollo. It's the Antichrist. All right, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. If I don't see you before then, I probably will. But that's the end of today. I gave you a super long one to hold you over. There you go. See you later. Thank you very much.